That's a whoop. I'm glad you're feeling more fresh than I am this morning. Thank you for those who've made the effort to get out of bed to listen to my dear leader this afternoon. You know what, it's 6 months almost to the day since I turned up at the Scottish Party Conference in Inverness, and Alex introduced me on stage for the first time as his newest member of his team, as his newest MSP, and as his newest colleague. It's safe to say that I brought the average age of the MSP group down considerably when I joined the Scottish. But do you know what? It's an absolute thrill to now be introducing him onto the stage. Apparently he's got a 15-minute slot, so I said I'm going to speak for 14 minutes, and I'm going to leave him one at the end. Do you know what? I mean, Alex and I have been friends since I joined the Scottish Parliament back in 2016. He chipped away at me for years. He said, come and join us. You are in the wrong place over in those Tory benches. And do you know what? I always knew he was right. And I'm just so sorry that it took me so long to cross the floor and join him and become one of his colleagues. I've had the best 6 months of my life this last 6 months. You guys have been amazing. And I'm really grateful for the experience. The crowd last night was incredible. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you who bought me a beer in the bar last night. You can tell I'm suffering today. But do you know what? Alex Cohammon is a machine. Do you know what? He surfs. He irons his waistcoats. He's got an amazing tan. It's better than mine, I have to say. But do you know what? From Shettleston to Shetland, he is out there knocking on doors. He is relentless. He's not afraid to talk to each and every voter across our land, and that's what we need to do as well. I can't wait to hear what he's got to say to us here today, because the next Scottish election is so important. It's not just important for Scotland, it's important for all of us, and it's important for the entire United Kingdom, because we've got a job to do. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for my friend, our dear leader, Alex Cohammon. We do it again.
Thank you, Conference, and thank you, Jamie. Conference, when Jamie Green made the brave decision to leave the Scottish Conservative Party and join us back in April, I couldn't have been more pleased. Not just because it swelled our ranks at Holyrood, but because he has shown over the years that he is such a compassionate and profoundly talented Member of Parliament. He has been met with such warmth and generosity from Liberal Democrats, the length and breadth of the United Kingdom, as we saw at a tremendous rally performance last night. And we didn't just welcome him in, because in Jamie we recognise a kindred spirit, someone who wants to get stuck in. That's what Liberals are all about. My goodness, he's wasted no time in getting to work. As our economy, finance and transport spokesperson, he is playing a central role in budget negotiations. He's launched a consultation as part of his mission to end the SNP's ferry fiasco. And just last week, he put into law rights for victims of crime. Leave something for the rest of us to do, please, Jamie. He has swapped the endless infighting and bitterness of the Scottish Conservatives for a party that is united, that is positive, and is brimming with hope. Jamie speaks for a massive constituency of people who are dismayed by what the Conservative Party has become. A party that has learned precisely nothing from the disastrous leadership of Boris Johnson and of Liz Truss. People used to compare the number of Conservatives in Scotland to the number of pandas at Edinburgh Zoo. Now, all the pandas have sadly packed up and left. And the way things are going, they'll soon be followed by Russell Finley's Conservative Party. And I know others in that party are considering their positions as well. You can quite literally see them squirming in their seats at Holyrood People right up and down the country are turning their backs on the Scottish Conservatives too. Kemi Badenoch sneers at us for being the party that will be active in your community, for being the ones that will turn up and fix your church roof. That shows exactly why the Conservatives have lost the public's trust. Getting stuff done for our local communities is our bread and butter. It's why we're in politics. It's what we are all about. And it's what people are crying out for. So, if you took a chance on Ruth Davidson, but aren't willing to stay for Russell, McFarage, Finlay, then come with us. If you took a chance on a Broadchurch vision for the Conservatives, but aren't willing to stay for the economic illiteracy and the language of the hard right, come with us. And if you took a chance on Ruth Davidson, but aren't willing to stay for the climate change denial or the nasty party they have returned to, then come with us. Conference, while Ed Davey and our campaign teams were knocking down the blue wall, we were winning more seats than the Scottish Conservatives north of the border. And we can overtake them too in May. Conference, for the first time in the history of Holyrood, the Scottish Liberal Democrats will beat the Conservatives. Conference, ours is a decent and caring country, a country that thrives when we are internationalists of outlook. The UK can be a force for good when it stands tall on the world stage. And I don't mean the pomp and ceremony of a state visit. I am so proud of the leadership that Ed Davey has shown in calling for the immediate recognition of the state of Palestine. I am proud of the leadership Ed has shown in pushing the UK government to do more to end the suffering in Gaza, for the hostages still held by Hamas, and the Palestinians starving and dying under constant IDF bombardment, because, Conference, we need to end the genocide. Because our country is stronger when we stand up to bullies, be they Netanyahu, Donald Trump, or Vladimir Putin. Our country is stronger when we invest in our defense and that of Ukraine. And our country is stronger when we work with our allies. That doesn't mean doing deals with the Taliban like Nigel Farage wants. It means putting Britain back at the heart of Europe. That speaks to our values as liberals. And we need more of that in every country, at every level of government. We need liberals. We need liberals to win elections. Conference, Wendy Chamberlain joined our party at its lowest point. It must have been the police officer's instinct in her sprinting towards trouble. And it was Wendy who stepped forward after we missed out on gaining the constituency of North East Fife from the SNP by an agonising 2-vote margin. From 2 votes behind, Wendy Chamberlain's majority over the SNP now stands at a whopping 13,500 votes. She's proven that she can beat them twice now. She's at the heart of Ed's record-breaking team. Public service is in her DNA. And her constituents trust her to get the job done. And so do I. Which is why I can announce today that Wendy Chamberlain is going to chair our Scottish parliamentary election campaign. Because Wendy doesn't just know how to beat the SNP, she knows how to give them the electoral thumping that they deserve. Conference, from Stranraer to Shetland, from Skye to St Andrews. Scotland has so much going for it. But everywhere I go, people say right now that it feels like our country just simply is not working. The long waits to see your GP. Everything is so much more expensive. Scottish education just isn't what it used to be. And don't get me started on the ferries fiasco. People are frustrated, and they're right to be. Scotland deserves better than this, but it needs to be change with fairness at its heart. this is my message to voters. You have 2 votes at the coming Scottish Parliament elections. In many constituencies, we are on the verge of winning against the SNP. But wherever you are, every vote for the Scottish Liberal Democrats on the second peach ballot will deliver change with fairness at its heart. Because Scotland deserves better, and conference with the Scottish Liberal Democrats, you can vote for it. Conference, there will be young Scots casting their ballots at the coming election who weren't even born when the SNP first came to power. All they have ever known is Salmond, Sturgeon, Yusuf and Swinney. They've grown up in cold homes, travelled deadly roads like the A9 and faced violence in their schools. Does the SNP really merit a 3rd decade in power? Conference, they do not. Scotland deserves better. The young people I helped as a youth worker deserve better. Islanders stuck without ferries deserve better. Patients waiting and age for care deserve better. For all the questions facing Scotland right now, Conference, the answer to none of them is a 5th term in office for the SNP. In the last days of his tenure as First Minister, Humza Yousaf jettisoned the Green Party from coalition government. His administration was collapsing all around him. He invited me for talks to see if we could offer him a way to stay in power. Conference, I couldn't, in all conscience, even take that meeting. You see, I'm not going to prop up a failing government. I will not deny our communities the change that they are crying out for. And you saw from our participation in the Scottish budget last year that Liberal Democrats will always act like grown-ups. We'll work in our communities and across Parliament to get things done for the people of Scotland. And the more MSPs we have, the more we can get done. But Conference, let me be abundantly clear. Not a single one of our MSPs will serve in an SNP-led administration. I will not countenance a coalition with the Nationalists, and I will not vote to put them in power, because Scotland deserves better. The opportunity for change for our country is just around the corner. Alongside our colleagues in Wales, we face the single biggest test for Liberal Democrats this side of the next general elections. And friends, we are here for it. We are motoring day and night to play our part in the great Liberal Democrat revival. Candidates selected earlier than ever before. More money raised at this stage than ever before. Want to be part of a winning campaign? Come help us. Remember, loads of us came south to play our part in those stunning by-elections you had here in England. Now it's time to come and help us. In seats like Argyll and Bute, Strathkelvin and Bearsden, North Edinburgh, right across the Highlands, every leaflet delivered, every single call made, every conversation had on the doorsteps brings us closer to victory. So get yourselves up to Scotland. Come on, join us in delivering the breakthrough victories our country is crying out for. As Jamie kindly mentioned, every week I try to get round the country, knocking doors, finding out how people are feeling and what needs fixed. They're tired. They feel let down by all the other parties. And the Scottish Liberal Democrats believe Scotland deserves better than this. We believe in fairness for everyone, no matter who you are or where you come from. That's why we have a realistic plan to get things done. Delivering first-rate healthcare so that you can see your GP, dentist, or mental health professional when you need them. Helping you with the cost of living, insulating those cold homes, and using Scottish renewable energy to drive down household bills. Getting Scotland moving again by fixing our roads, our ferries, and our public transport. and Scottish education back to its best, expanding pupil support in every school and giving every child the best start in life. Liberal Democrats conference are winning again with more councillors, a record number of MPs and more to come. The coming election is an opportunity for change with fairness at its heart, because Scotland deserves better, and with the Scottish Liberal Democrats conference you can vote for it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, conference. If you could move quickly to your seats, we now move to item F26, which is the Leaders' Q&A. And we're delighted to have Carolyn Quinn back again, the acclaimed political journalist, who's going to be putting your questions to Ed. Carolyn presented on the Today programme, PM, the Westminster Hour for many, many years. I certainly look forward to hearing her comforting voice on a Sunday evening, not always so comforting to the politicians that she forensically quizzed. Let's hope she doesn't give Ed too hard a time. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Carolyn Quinn and Sir Ed Davey.
Oh my goodness, what music did we just walk into? Jungle Book. Are we in the jungle? Thanks very much, Cara. And welcome, everyone. And you know, this is your moment. These are your questions that I'm going to put with maybe a little flourish of my own. But I'm going to try and get through as many as possible in our 50 minutes. So Ed will be short and sharp, won't you, in your answers, and then we can get through more of the questions. So, Ed Davey, you are ready to face questions from your members. Can I put the first one then? I might combine two actually here, because we have James Bradley, who's a 16-year-old, he says, from Cheshire East. He asks, how can we prevent reform gaining popularity among the youth while ensuring that Lib Dems attract and engage more young people? And I think that sort of ties in with another question that came from Maddie Anstruther from Kensington and Chelsea about the plan to win back traditional blue wall seats while still appealing to progressive urban voters. So you've got calls from your party. How are you going to face both sides and try to get more seats at the next election?
Well, hello, conference. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, James and Maddie, for those questions. The best way to do it is by being Liberal Democrat. That's the first main answer, true to our values and our principles. The question is, how do we speak to these different groups of people who are, I think, there for us if we speak to them well? Let's start with young people. We've been doing a whole range of things. The conference has been passing wonderful motions on everything from mental health to climate change to Europe, to issues that matter to young people. And we've been doing a few things on social media and expanding into TikTok. I don't know how many of you have seen my TikTok videos. Well, more of you should get on TikTok because we're there. And
you must have seen his TikTok.
YouGov is showing in its opinion polls when it asked 18 to 24-year-olds, 18 to 24, which party they support. In the last Parliament, we averaged 9%. We're now at 18%, double our support. And I know the BBC, sorry, Carolyn, may not report this, but we're leading reform amongst young people, according to YouGov. Not just by a bit, but we've got more than double reform support. So we're doing something right, but as James says, we've got to do more of it. We've got to be heard by young people more and more. So yeah, I will be doing those TikTok videos and other things, and I encourage you in your communities to do that as well and engaging young people. Tell them what we're about, because they don't. When you expose Nigel Farage and reform, they don't actually share his values. They share our liberal values. And coming to the second question about how we make sure those blue wall supporters still back us, do you know, I think they like who we are and what we're about. And our issues on mental health, on the environment, on social care, on Europe, appeal well to that group of people. And we showed that at the last general election. So, you know, I'm committed to talking about who we are, sharing that with more people, and when they hear it, I think they will come. I think we have a historic opportunity to grow our party from the huge success that we've all had in the last few years.
Kamran Hussain in Leeds, though, says that, you know, you want to attract more people, former Labour voters in particular, who are now politically homeless, he says. I mean, how do you persuade disillusioned Labour voters not to switch to the new look Green Party? Brand new leader saying exciting things, Zach Polanski.
Well, I actually think a lot of people who voted Labour last time are disillusioned and are politically homeless. But I think they're attracted more...
Why should they come to you?
Well, I think they are attracted more to our ideas. I talked to a lot of those people. They really agree with us on things like Europe. They agree with us on political reform. They agree with us in our opposition to what the Labour government has been doing. They're appalling cuts to disability benefits. We oppose that. People like the fact that we stood up for disabled people. The attacks that Labour has done on small businesses, on pensioners, we've opposed that very strongly. We've led the opposition on that. Our positions on everything from Gaza to Donald Trump. People actually like that, particularly from the Labour ranks. And I think our voice has been the strongest in Parliament on things like opposing Donald Trump and all he stands for. And I think that has got noticed. And I find Labour MPs saying, we wish our side was saying that.
Well, have any said that they'll defect to the Lib Dems?
Oh, if they had, I wouldn't be telling you on a public platform.
Well, you could hint. I'm sure people would like to hear at least a hint.
I'm sure you would, but we don't do that in public.
But what about membership, though, Ed? Because, I mean, what have the Lib Dems got? 80,000 members at the moment, and Farage and Reform have got 3 times more than that. So people are opting to join Reform if they feel politically homeless, perhaps, could be the argument.
Well, I think we all know that Reform is getting some support. I mean, that's obvious, and we have to respond to that. And if you come to my speech on Tuesday, I might say a little bit more about that. But for today, first of all, our 80,000 members are the best members of any political party. I'm really proud of our members and what they do, and you can clap yourselves if you like. And I think our members are amongst the most active members, getting out there in their communities. And by the way, that is one of the things I believe strongly about how we take on reform. By rebuilding trust in political parties, community by community. There is no doubt that people don't trust politicians any longer. They particularly don't trust the Conservatives and Labour. And one of the reasons we've been doing so well in the last general election, in local elections up and down the country, is because of our community politics, our style of campaigning, where we knock on the door, where we listen to people in their community and we get things done, we get stuff fixed. And that brings people to us, and it means that people trust us more. And if you look at council elections, when we've had head-to-head fights with Reform since May, we've won 3/4 of those fights with Reform. We're the only party doing that. Reform has taken council seats off all the other major political parties except us. Here in Bournemouth, just a few weeks ago, we had what was effectively a head-to-head against Reform, and who won? Liberal Democrats won.
But Ed, you know that the Lib Dems always face the charge that you will say one thing to one group of supporters or voters or potential voters and a completely different thing to other potential supporters.
Which is not true, though, is it?
Well,
I mean, our opponents...
Well, hang on, hold on, let me finish the point. Because you want to bring back those blue wall seats. So you're trying to attract Labour voters at the same time as traditional Conservatives by talking about traditional British values, perhaps. But, you know, you are also talking about raising capital gains tax for wealthy people, maybe talking about a land value tax. How is that going to go down in those leafy, affluent areas where you want to dig into the Conservative vote?
Well, first of all, your general question that we say different things is simply not true. And I go around the country and I see our campaigns, and everyone's campaigning for their local NHS, for improving the care system. Everyone's campaigning for decent housing, for affordable housing. Everyone's campaigning for their local environment. I see common themes. Sometimes there are issues that are different from area to area, and of course, therefore, you campaign on what people are concerned about.
Well, there have been planning differences, haven't there?
Area.
Yeah.
Sorry?
There have been planning differences, I mean,
of course,
in previous elections.
Yeah, and that's right. And one of the problems with the planning system, which Labour aren't fixing, is they're not allowing communities to have a stronger voice. One of the reasons why we've been against some of the planning in some of our communities, even though actually we're building, if you look at some of our councils, record numbers of affordable and social homes, but one of the reasons why we oppose some of the development is because it's top-down. It's developer-led. And you know, one of the reasons why people are disaffected from politicians, and some of them going to Reform, Carolyn, is because of this top-down thing where things are being done to them. If you actually involve local people like we do as good community politicians, engage them and listen to them and make sure any development actually has something in it for the local people who are already there, maybe a new GP centre, maybe fixing some of the transport infrastructure, then people will get behind it. And I see lots of Liberal Democrat councils doing that fabulously well. So I'm really happy to take on that planning charge, often run against us, because actually it's either completely untrue or it's based on a false premise.
All right. Continuing a question about Reform, because really everyone is talking about them at the moment. If you talk to people here at the conference, every interview that you've had, you've talked about the threat from Reform. I wonder, Ed, who do you think is more dangerous to the future of our country, Nigel Farage or Elon Musk? And that is a question that's been posed by John Coulson in Mole Valley.
John, well, thank you for that answer. Well, they're both not on our side, let's be clear. I've got them both in my sights. But, you know, for our electoral politics, fundamentally it's going to be Farage's Reform. And let me say a little bit more about how I see that battle. Increasingly, as I mentioned a little earlier, people no longer trust the two old parties. I mean, their performance of the last election was historically poor. Their poll rating is even worse since. I think more and more people are saying we can't believe in what Labour or the Conservatives are offering, and that's a huge opportunity for us. However, what people are looking for is change, and is how can we improve the standard of living of people? How can we improve the public services? How can we make things work again? And I think in the next election, the battle will be between us and Reform. I think that's how it's shaping up. Reform is offering change, yes, but it's a change that's not true to British values. It's more a bit like Trump's America. The more you see Farage and hear him, he wants to do what Trump and America have done. A health service based on health insurance where people have to pay. They want to frack across our countryside, all the other things that Nigel Farage is talking about. It's change, but is it the change that people want? Going towards Trump's America. Our change, I think, is the thing that excites me, where we have really radical changes to the health system through valuing family carers and social care, where we have radical reforms to reset our relationship with Europe, so broken by the Conservatives and completely unrepaired by Labour and opposed by Reform. We have big changes. Take electoral reform. Nigel Farage used to be in favour of electoral reform, didn't he? He's not any longer. You can't trust him on change. You can trust the Liberal Democrats on change. And when we come to the next election, Carolyn, I think people will see us as the true change party, truer to their values.
What about the over 100,000 people who took to the streets to express their discontent in many cases? They weren't all Tommy Robinson supporters, were they?
No, I agree.
And you've acknowledged that yourself. These were people taking to the streets, not knowing how else to express their discontent and feeling that Nigel Farage and Reform are addressing their concerns about crime and immigration policies. For instance, Helen Cross in Hounslow Borough asks you this question. If he's claiming his crime and immigration policies are about him being a protector of women and girls and children, how can we show him that he is anything but? His message is chiming with a lot of people on asylum, immigration, on the state of our urban areas as well. How do you take that on?
Well, Helen, thank you for your question. And going back to the protests as well and trying to link them together, there's no doubt there were some people on that protest who were big followers of Tommy Robinson, a far-right agenda which sows division and hatred, and we should oppose that with every bone in our body and all that we stand for. That is the opposite of us. But there were people on that protest who, when they were interviewed by the media, they were there because they felt no one was listening to them in their communities about their health services. They felt that the economy had been done so badly by the Tories and Labour that they couldn't afford things for their family. So we have to focus on those concerns, and we have. And so Helen's right, we need to call out his policies, because we're on the safety of women. If you look at what he is saying, when he says, for example, get rid of the Online Safety Act, what does that mean? Well, the Online Safety Act was there to protect people from abuse online. And that's where you link Farage with Musk, because Musk doesn't want any regulation on his Online Safety Act. He doesn't want to be held to account for breaking the law. Do you know, on X, his team have let happen, because he's cut back the safety team, adverts promoting videos of child sexual abuse. That is against the law. We should call him out for that. And we should say, Nigel Farage, you wanting to get rid of the protection of our children, our women, you are a danger to people. And we should call him out on that, colleagues. So,
are you prepared to take on Elon Musk then for those comments on for the way that his platform X is operated?
Yeah, totally. I mean, let's just strap back about Elon Musk and how dangerous he is, because I hope I've laid out why Farage is dangerous, and I think you probably agree with me. But Elon Musk is a danger too. He said that civil war in our country is inevitable. How shocking is that? He said a democratically elected government should be overthrown. He's incited violence. He's not interested in Britain and the British people. He's interested in his own economic interests, his own bank account. He doesn't want regulation of his business. And that's why he's looking to Farage to get rid of the Online Safety Act, which would be so damaging for the safety of our children and everybody, frankly. Take another example, the digital services tax, brought in actually by a Conservative government to make sure that big American tech firms or big tech firms, wherever they came from, like the social media giants, they paid their fair share. And now Labour's worrying about, well, maybe we have to do a deal with Donald Trump, who represents these people, and cut that tax. We say no. We say, if anything, increase the digital services tax. Make those big American tech firms pay. Make the likes of Elon Musk pay. That is surely our right as a democratic country. And I worry when people seem kowtowed by Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Let us stand up to them. Liberalism is about making the powerful, holding the powerful to account, making them face up to their responsibilities. And I'm proud that we are doing that.
How does that fit with free speech, though? And you know, if you're talking about cracking down on what's said on X, isn't it for Ofcom, the regulator,
of course it is.
To police X? It's not for you.
No. Of course, Ofcom, and I completely support it. We back the Online Safety Act, and it's been a long time coming, and Ofcom is in charge of that. So, but I think it's fair enough for us to call out Elon Musk and say, look, he's clearly breaking the law. For all I know, Ofcom got investigations running, and they're about to take measures. They certainly should do, in my view, because the evidence, I think, is overwhelming. And, you know, Elon Musk pretends to be the champion of free speech. Well, come off it. Come off it. This is a person who only likes the free speech if he agrees with it. And he changes his algorithms, doesn't he, to promote the things that he agrees with. If he really agrees with free speech, let him allow an independent organization to manage the algorithms on his social media platform. I bet he wouldn't let that happen, would he?
Let me move on to a different topic, because I know you've spoken quite a lot about Elon Musk today as well, in quite personal terms as well. Karen Lindsay in West Lothian has this question. What is your view on changing Lib Dem policy about ID cards, digital ID?
Hi, I see Karen there. Hi, Karen. Listen, I was very much part of the opposition to Blair's ID cards for many, many reasons. Giving the state so much power with a centralized database where people had to, produce their card on the street, that was clearly wrong, and we opposed it. I think when we talk about digital identity, could be a different thing, but may not be. We don't know what they're actually going to put forward. We should scrutinize it really carefully. If it's about giving individuals power to access public services, to access information that is theirs, that could increase people's freedom, then I don't think we should be against increasing people's freedom and rights. However, I fear it, but that's not what the game is. I fear this is a bit like what they tried to do before, where it's authoritarian, where it's centralized, where it's controlled by the state, and we should oppose that like we did before.
Hold on, though. You've been in Estonia recently, and you've seen a digital ID system used there. The argument is made all the time, isn't it? We've got so much digital, our digital identity is out there. A yes or no? I mean, would you say that you could look at the idea of having some sort of ID card system, which would help in so many areas, as we know when we're talking about asylum, immigration as well?
Well, you're right. I did go to Estonia, and I looked at their digital identity, which is very, very different from Blair's ID cards, by the way. Very, very different. And
it's a different time now, of course, isn't
I know,
it?
but I just want to make the point that it's very, very different from that. And what was interesting talking to the Estonians was they're run by liberals who care about freedom and really worry about giving state control. And the reason they worry about giving state control is they were occupied by the Russians for many decades, and they saw what Russian occupation meant. It meant killing lots of people, and it meant abuse of state power. And they know, and they're worried with Russia on the border, that something might happen again. So they're building systems to make sure that the state couldn't do that. So I think we need to listen to people to see if we can use technology to help people in their own lives. But, and this is the key thing, we shouldn't give the state the control. That was what was wrong before. That's what the Estonians, I felt, really were trying to prevent happening.
Can I have a little moment to have a straw poll then? Shall we do that? Let's just see. I mean, obviously, things have changed when it comes to digital ID. How many of you think that now is the time to rethink Lib Dem policy on ID cards? Can you just give me a show of hands just for a rough idea? Quite a lot of people, Ed.
Have you all been to Estonia? Yes. Yeah.
So you know, this is living in today's world, not the Blair world.
Times have changed. That's why I'm saying let's look at it. I don't think we should be knee-jerk opposition, but what we should remember is why we opposed things in the past. Because it was state-run, centralized database. It wasn't about giving individuals freedoms. If you look at what the Estonians have done, they give you the power to check who's been looking at your data. And if you don't like that someone's been looking at your data, you can take them to court and get them fined. That's putting power in the hands of individuals. So there are models that may answer our objections as liberals. I don't know. I haven't done my mastermind thesis on it, but I would say that it's an issue that we should debate, right? We should debate as a party openly and open-mindedly.
You'd all like a debate on it, would you? Yeah. There we are. I think we've got a tiny little shift there, haven't we, away from hardline opposition.
The conference hasn't spoken, so the conference speaks.
Right. Okay, all right, thanks, Ed. Sorry, I will move on to another question because that's obviously a debate to be had in future. A couple of questions came in about the situation in Gaza, of course, that we've all been talking about, and the pain and anguish there. Sophie Walker and Chris Wilson. Sophie Walker in Hull, Chris Wilson in Reading, both put questions in on a similar topic, as did Jeff Seif in Huntingdonshire, who said, is recognising a state of Palestine the right thing to do right now? And maybe if you had gone along to the state banquet, you might have been able to chat to some people in the Trump team about it, is one of the other points that you get asked.
Okay, well, let me try and answer some of those questions. But I don't know if you've heard the news, but just a few minutes ago, the UK did recognise the state of Palestine, and I think we should be recognise. And I think we should be proud that we've campaigned for that for nearly a decade, right? Nearly a decade. That's been our policy. And I want to particularly celebrate one person's campaigning on that, her contribution to that. She spoke from the heart. She's been absolutely brilliant on it. Our friend, Layla Moran. You know, you said in your question, is this the right time? You know, there's always people say it's never the right time. And they've been saying that forever in every circumstance. There's always some reason not to do it. It is the right time to do it. We need to kickstart peace. We need to show to the Netanyahu government that there are countries around the world who want peace and who want a two-state solution, just as Liberal Democrats do. So I think it is a good step in that direction. But to come to the banquet, there's a lot more to do. People are still getting killed. Children are still dying of hunger. The hostages are still being held. This has to end. This humanitarian crisis has to end. And I actually suggested that Trump had a state visit, because I'm in favor of engaging with people. I had intended to go. I've had the fortune to represent our party at, I think, 6 previous state banquets, so I sort of know what they're like. And you never get to talk to the head of state, to lobby them. You never really get to speak to their senior entourage. It's nice and pompous ceremony, and the grub's pretty good. And His Majesty is fantastic. However, you don't really get to do any serious lobbying. And what I was trying to do, and it took me a while to get to the decision not to go, I was trying to raise the issue of Gaza, and particularly in the relationship to the role that President Trump ought to be playing. I was genuinely worried that he'd come to our country, there'd be pomp and ceremony, there'd be maybe discussions of tariffs or discussions of this or that, but Gaza would not be mentioned. And I want to put pressure onto our government to raise it with him, but also the media to raise it with him, because he is the one person in the world who can stop it. He could ring up Netanyahu today and say, stop it. Stop the fighting, bring in the food, medicine and water. And he could ring up the Qatari government and other Gulf state governments who basically support Hamas and have supported Hamas and tell them to release the hostages. He could do that. He chooses not to use that power. How awful is that? And I think it was a small thing, right? And I know he doesn't know who I am, right? It was quite a humble thing, really. But you know where I felt vindicated was at the press conference after Starmer and Donald Trump had their talks. And two journalists, great journalists, in my view, asked him directly the questions I wanted answer. Why don't you pick up the phone to Netanyahu and bring this to an end? Why don't you phone the Qataris? So I feel that the Liberal Democrat position has been vindicated. We need to put pressure on Trump and others, pressure on our government, to make sure we get that peace and stop the killing and stop the starvation and get the hostages released.
Can I... But just, very briefly, how do you answer the charge that it can be perceived as a reward for Hamas to recognise a Palestinian state? Hamas, a prescribed terror organisation.
Well, first obvious thing from the Liberal Democrat perspective, we've been campaigning it for over 10 years, or for nearly 10 years, to be correct.
But that argument is being put forward now.
Yeah, but I just think it's a false argument. We have been strongly condemning Hamas as a genocidal organisation. Hamas is appalling. And we've spoken about it at our conferences, we've spoken about it at press conferences. It is possible to oppose Hamas and everything they stand for, as well as say what Netanyahu's government is doing in Gaza and the West Bank is wrong. You can hold both positions at the same time.
There were quite a few questions about the decision not to have a debate on trans. Now, we've got Artie Kovanoff in South Edinburgh asking what more can be done to show leadership on defending trans and refugee rights as well as civil liberties. Now, there was a question about having a debate. It hasn't happened. Do you think that maybe there's a bit of Lib Dem being out of touch with public opinion?
No. Listen, this conference, in our spring conference, debated a whole policy paper on LGBT plus rights and our policies for the community. We debated it at length. Which other party's done that? No other party is dealing with these issues, these really important issues for equality, these really important issues which sometimes have sensitivities, and we can sometimes disagree on them in our party, but we came together at our conference and debated them like no other party, and I'm so proud that we're leading the way again. So and the debate, or the lack of a debate here, I wasn't in the auditorium to hear the arguments, but I sort of guess people thought, well, we'd had a debate at spring conference. What I would say on any substantive issue is that in our constitution it is very clear that Liberal Democrats will always follow the law, and we always will.
Yeah, so it wasn't transphobic, was it, to raise the question? Some activists feel that they were shut down and they're angry if they think that they've been called transphobic for just wanting to have a debate.
I think name-calling is never a terribly good idea. And I think just take the heat out of the debate, please. And I say that to everyone in our party and elsewhere. You know, these are sensitive, difficult issues, and we need to listen to each other and learn from each other. And the way we have done it in our party, I think, is an example, particularly in our really impressive debate last spring conference, example to others.
Talking about dealing with difficult issues in a sensitive way, there's a question from Matt Smith in Lewisham, and I'm going to tie it in with another one as well from Tabitha Foster in Sutton. Matt says, your sympathy for Angela Rayner, of course, who had to resign as Deputy Prime Minister, was a rare moment of humanity in the Westminster soap opera. Do you think politics does need to be more forgiving of human error? And Tabitha's point was, how do you keep going on tough days when the political odds do feel stacked against the Lib Dems?
Well, on the Angela Rayner point and the broader point about how you treat other politicians, I think people need to be held account for their actions. Of course they do, particularly when they're in high office. And I always said that, you know, if the ethics advisor found that Angela Rayner had broken the ministerial code, she would need to resign, and that's what happened. But what we tried not to do and what we said was to ignore the challenges that she was facing. And I mean, obviously I had a particular degree of empathy with her because she and I are both parents of disabled children, and we know the pressures that that puts on us and how it inevitably distracts you a lot. And that's why I thought we needed to sort of show a degree of compassion in how we talked about people from other parties. And I was really grateful for the comments that I received from many people about that. That wasn't the intention. I just read her statement. And if you read Angela's statement, you could sort of feel the need to show and how right it was to show compassion.
Did she get in touch with you? Did she talk about, you know, say thank you for, you know, helping out on a tough day?
I think she's been a bit busy, to be fair. But going on to your other point about how I feel when, you know, it's a busy time. Now I've been a member of the party since 1989. I love our party. I love what we stand for. I love how we campaign, and I'm determined that we just go from strength to strength. And yes, they'll throw stuff at us, Elon Musk, whoever. Of course they will. You know, when you're campaigning in your areas, that you can get a bit of a tough time from our opponents. That's politics. I'm very fortunate to have a loving family. My wife, Emily, who will be with us tomorrow and Tuesday, is a huge support to me. I've made this confession before, but I'll repeat it. I met her on a Liberal Democrat housing policy working group, you know. Some people think I should get out a bit more, but fortunately Emily doesn't. So, you know, the family is always a rock. And friends in the party who also keep you sane and grounded, and also my kids keep me sane and grounded.
I suppose your Angela Rayner comments were going against the flow, weren't they? You know, at the time, it seemed that the pressure was really stacking up against her, which is perhaps why it struck a chord with people, that you were prepared to go out there and say, oh, hang on, there's a human being here.
Well, that's who Liberal Democrats are, right? We don't always go with the flow. And I'm really happy to lead a party that doesn't always go for the flow. I come back to the point, we've always been a party of change. From changing the voting system to tackling social justice, to making environment a real issue, to you know, reforming all those important public services in different ways than others do, to being real community politicians. We are different, right? We offer a different future for our country, and we should be proud of that. And yeah, there's pressures on us, but you know, one thing that I love about coming to conferences is another confession. Coming to conferences is like being with your family again. You know, I've been to every conference since 1989, bar two. I took a break for a year, and I thought, I'm missing something in my life. And when I came back to the next conference, I thought, I know what it was. I'm seeing friends from around the country who share my values and my views, and we're not always going to agree on everything. Hey, we're Liberal Democrats. But it's so lovely to feel the support of our amazing family. And I hope first-timers, and this is your first conference, I was speaking to them yesterday, if there are any first-timers in the auditorium now, I hope you're feeling that friendship from all in our party.
Here's a question from Emily Tester in Southwark Borough. Is it time to retire the stunts? What do you think? Who said yes?
Well, I think you persuaded me. Listen, the whole thing, and I say this to lots of journalists, first of all, is you don't have to take yourselves seriously as long as you take the voters' concerns seriously and have serious ways of addressing those concerns. And here's an intellectual bit of it. And I may have said this before, I don't know, but I really feel this quite deeply. Our wonderful party loves evidence and analysis and facts and reason and working things out and finding solutions, and that's why we're such a great party. But when we present our solutions to people, we've got to remember not just the head, but the heart, the emotions, the laughing, the crying. And seriously, if you look at some of our opponents, particularly on the extremes of politics, they actually get emotion quite well. Not just the nicest emotions. You know, if you look at a Trump or a Farage or an Orban or a Musk, all these people from, I would call, the darker side of politics, they make people laugh. But they then also appeal to the negative side, the fears, the anxiety, the prejudice. And they take those emotions and run with them and get support. And we must never copy that. Must never copy that. But what we should learn from them is the power of emotional politics. Now, if that is leading a marching band into Bournemouth, hey, I'm up for it. Puts a smile on people's face when so much is pretty dismal and divisive out there. Making people smile, that is the way, I think, to win people over. Not just to gain attention, and yeah, it might gain the odd bit of attention and coverage, but it's actually also about the reaction response you get by engaging with people where they are. And it's not just laughter, it's also being emotional about the tough times that people are having. We've got to really understand how tough it is for so many people. You know, whether it's the cost of living, whether it's their inability to get the care they need. And it's one of the reasons my wife and I decided to make the video we did during the general election. I have to tell you, that wasn't an easy video to make, but I wanted to get over, not just about, you know, who I am and what I care about, what our party cares about, but, you know, we need to show we get people. We get people. And so I still think the stunts are important. They're not just the only thing we need to do. But, you know, they're measuring me up for my next bungee harness.
Is there anything you'd refuse to do?
There is one. I have a phobia about ice skating. You know, I'm a Nottingham lad, you know. I should, like ice skating, but I really can't do ice skating. There are a few other things that were ruled out. I was quite happy with them, but apparently health and safety got in the way.
All right, well, so you didn't argue with that. Look, just one quick one on from Christopher Hudson in Lewisham. What would you do differently to Labour and the Conservatives on the issue of the climate, climate action, climate change, how do we tackle it? I'm particularly struck by the fact that we've had this big announcement about massive investment into the UK to build data centres, which are going to provide lots of jobs, we're told. But aren't they going to use a heck of a lot of water and a heck of a lot of energy? And have we got the sustainable energy to keep them going? Aren't we then going to have to go back to using North Sea gas and oil because we can't do the transition quickly enough? So many questions are coming up on this issue at the moment. Where are the Lib Dems on it, and what do you say about pursuing your sustainable energy aims when it seems that there are so many conflicting pressures at the moment?
Well, what I'm surprised about the announcement, not that we're wanting to invest in technology. Of course we should invest in technology, AI or whatever. But it's all a bit unplanned and unstrategic. And the danger is, if they don't get it right, it will cause problems for water supply. It will cause problems for energy supply and put prices up when we need to get energy bills down. So they need to think more carefully about where we locate data centres to make sure that our systems can cope and we don't see negative effects on communities and on people's bills. What I think Liberal Democrats do on your broader question on climate change, we're the leaders on this issue. We've always been the leader. I mean, the policies that we have passed in this conference have been fantastic, and I'm really proud of what our local councils do on these issues. Now, I know Reform want to get rid of net zero, but I was talking to Amanda Hopgood, who is now the leader of the opposition on Durham County Council, and Reform have got rid of various investments which were making the council money, right? So this is how crazy some of these policies of the Reform are. They're going to keep people colder, put up bills, and waste money. So I think we've got to take the argument to people. And I think, the speech I made before the summer recess, which was about how we should have a programme to cut people's energy bills in half over the next decade. And the way we do that is by investing in renewables, by investing in insulation. We know that's the cheapest form of electricity, so we should lead that. And we should say really clearly, Farage might want to frack everywhere. Farage might want to import Russian gas everywhere, but that gas will put up your energy bills because it's the most expensive form of energy. Let's take them on and show that our agenda, which is better for the climate, better for the environment, is also better for your pocket.
Okay. Couple of minutes left. Couple of quick fire questions. Would you say yes if Strictly came calling?
Now that is controversial. I'm going to let you into secret. I know it was a quick question, but you got a long answer. We're debating that. I'll leave it there.
Well, they've asked you. Have they asked you?
Well,
yes, they have.
Well,
they have asked you.
Listen, I'm going to deny that.
You're denying that they've asked?
I genuinely don't think they have, actually.
All right, okay.
But, I mean, if they have, the letter didn't reach my desk.
Ah. All right. SpongeBob or Mean Girls?
Sorry?
SpongeBob or Mean Girls?
Mr. Squarepants.
Have you worked out yet what you said when you
Someone explained it to me.
Excel, yeah.
But that's great. I just want to pay tribute to our party's staff. Across the board, in council groups, in LDHQ, in Parliament, we have some of the most fantastic staff. A lot of them are young people. We don't pay them what they deserve, but they are creative, hardworking, utterly brilliant, and I want conference to pay tribute to all our staff who tell me about Mr. Squarepants.
All right. Okay. Nick Clegg's coming to the conference. He's going to address a fringe later on, and he, of course, as you know, has said don't rule out another coalition. Would the Lib Dems join Keir Starmer in coalition if it was the only way to keep reform out of government? Because you've said it's your moral duty to keep Farage out?
Listen, Nick Clegg, I was great to work with him. He was a really great leader. And I've been really impressed by how he's moved on.
Answer the question.
I'm going to, but Nick would have answered it very similarly. And I think it's really good that Nick is here because he knows more about what happens in Silicon Valley and how these people operate than any other British politician. And I urge you to go and see his Fringe, and we need to learn from Nick and others. We're not always going to agree with him, and I don't agree with him on his recommendation there.
But the coalition point, come on, answer it.
Yeah.
He says don't rule it out.
Well, listen, the thing I have learned, including from Nick, but from many of my other predecessors, is if you spend all your time thinking about what happens after polling day, you don't perform as well on polling day. And I do not want any of us to be distracted by that sort of conversation because we have votes to win, we have reform to beat. They are a threat to our country, a threat to our democracy. It's the most serious threat I think liberalism has faced, and we need to put all our efforts into beating that. That's what I'm going to do as leader, and I hope you will join me.
And Ed, they're applauding, but I'm going to ask you, do you think if it came to being the only way to keep Nigel Farage and Reform out of government, would you be happy for the Lib Dems to join a coalition? Just put up a show of hands if you think yes. Yes to coalition. Okay, there you are. There we are, we've pressed the bruise. Ed, I think I'm going to have to leave it there. I think we've run out of time.
Just getting going.
Is it, we're going to be pushed off the stage and more things will be happening on here. Ed, Davey, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. And thanks for all your questions. I'm so sorry I haven't got through them all.
Carolyn, on behalf of Conference, can I thank you for what you've done? Thank you very much. You've been a great
just ask
journalist.
the questions. Thank you. Thank you.
And can I just abuse the mic for a second? I want to have two other thank yous. First of all, to Cara Jenkinson, who's been an amazing member of the FCC for 9 years, is that right? And has contributed to our conferences year in, year out, is one of the unsung heroes behind the scenes. And please give it up for Cara. And one other thank you, which I really want to make, and that's to Mike Ross. The stewards at least know, if you're from Hull or you're a steward, you know, Mike became a steward to our conference back in 1998. He became the chief steward in 2011 and has done our conferences brilliantly with his amazing team of stewards. He's also the amazing leader of Hull City Council, taking on Labour and Reform. So give it up for Mike Ross. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Enjoy conference. Oops, don't go that way.
Thank you very much, conference. If you could quickly take your seats, because we've got another debate coming up. That's F27 for People and for Planet, and I'm going to be handing over to Councillor Nick da Costa.
Good afternoon, conference. Can I please ask those who are leaving to do so quickly, quietly and safely, please? so we can get started on the next item. If you're leaving, could you please leave quickly, quietly and safely? If you are going to have conversations, if you continue those outside of the auditorium, please. If you are leaving, you can also leave via exits on the far right and the far left as well, not just through the two central corridors. If you go to the seats over there and over there, you can also exit the auditorium. Okay, with that conference, we're going to crack on with the next item. This is F27 for People for Planet, the Climate Change Policy Paper. You can find this on pages 53 to 58 of your agenda. There are 3 amendments which you can find in Conference Daily, pages 9 to 11. Many of the cards I received were on Amendment 3, so I have structured the debate around that. We will open with discussions on the motion as a whole, including Amendments 1 and 2, before moving on to alternating views on Amendment 3. With that in mind, could I please ask Gideon Amos to stand by, and I call Pippa Halings to move the motion.
Thank you. Conference, friends, fellow Liberal Democrats, it's so wonderful to see you all gathered here today for policy motion F27 for People for Planet. And there's never been a more important and timely moment for us to be gathered here, standing up for our liberal green values. The twin climate and nature crises are the most important challenges of our time, and yet successive governments have failed to prepare, even though polling has shown that people want more climate action, not less. Our own commissioned Lib Dem polling analysis shows that all of those who voted Lib Dem in 2024, with our greatest result, are twice more likely than the general public to want us to be acting on climate and nature. And yet what do we see? Reform and the Conservatives making things so much worse, hell-bent on making things worse for everybody by scrapping the climate commitments altogether, sacrificing our planet for future generations. But, Conference, Liberal Democrats have a better plan. We always do. And I want to thank the Policy Working Group for a fantastic, stellar piece of work, because this policy paper makes us ready for government. It looks in depth at all of the levers across all of government and society that are needed for the transition and the transformation that we need, because it's not just about energy. The For People for Planet policy paper sets out how to tackle for the first time the climate and nature crises together. It helps families and businesses who are struggling with sky-high energy bills, knowing how to break the link between the high gas prices and electricity costs. And it's re-establishing the UK as world-leading in global climate action, with, of course, mobilising our reputation and our relationship with our closest EU neighbours. This policy is for people across the country. We want to cut energy bills in half, as we just heard Ed Davey, our leader, say, by investing massively in the clean, green, renewable energy revolution we need. Improving grants and incentives so that those who want to improve their homes are able to do it, with fantastic things like stamp duty rebate. The minute you buy a home, that's when you want to make the home improvements, so let's incentivize people to do it. But also to switch to electric vehicles. And what have we done already in Parliament, making sure we can get solar panels as a requirement on all new build homes, and the expansion of EV charging points. But conference, nobody in this day and age should be living in Dickensian, cold, damp homes. So we are supporting those on low incomes with a social energy tariff and an emergency home improvement scheme, which is free for all of those on low incomes, because we know there are avoidable deaths when they are in stifling heat in those homes that don't have ventilation. And we know the impact of cold, damp homes during the winter as well. It's also about our farmers and our rural communities who are being battered by the climate impacts we can no longer avoid. But they are the ones who, working together as stewards of our countryside, they can work with nature to make it possible to avoid massive flooding or to store, collect the water we need during our heat waves and droughts. But it's about businesses and it's about the economy and the future. Big and small, the net zero economy is growing 3 times faster than the overall UK economy. And globally, the green economy is the second fastest growing sector behind tech. So just as in the life sciences and AI, we want to be at the forefront of the green industrial revolution. We don't say drill, baby, drill. We say build, baby, build, because we've got to build out this incredible infrastructure that we need to take us over the line. We need new manufacturing centres. We need to regenerate our port cities to enable us to take that position as global leaders in floating offshore wind. Some of the most depressed areas around our ports, which we can regenerate. And we need to recognise the role that small modular reactors can contribute to us having nuclear energy in our energy mix. And in this transition to clean energy, front and centre of this policy as well is our support for the North Sea oil and gas workers, brilliantly highly skilled, and all of those from welders and the communities dependent on the supply chains, because we have to take everyone with us. Conference, we also have exciting amendments set out by Steve Darling MP, Gideon Amos MP, and our amazing young Liberals, all highlighting the strength of our party's democratic principles and process that shows when we work together, that's when we work best. So Steve Darling's amendment is to ensure that the NHS buildings are heat-proof, cool during heat waves, warm in the winter, and it's vital. Because if you've been in care homes, you've been in old people's estates, and when that heat wave is there, they've got every window open, every door open, and there's not a breath of wind. Gideon Amos's amendment also builds on our key work to ensure that energy bills for people across the UK are cheaper. We cut them in half, and that consumers feel the benefit of the clean energy transition in their pockets. So, conference, vote for this amazing policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Keith Melton to stand by, and I now call Gideon Amos, who's the spokesperson for Housing and Planning, to move Amendment 1.
Fellow Liberals, destroying our planet is anathema to liberalism. It has been ever since the father of liberalism, our own Somerset's John Locke, highlighted spoiling natural resources in the 1680s. As another Somerset man and Liberal today, I support this motion, but I want us to go further and I want us to go faster. Just as Liberals have always been devoted to using surpluses to free people from poverty, we must recognise that one of the greatest causes of the cost of living crisis is soaring energy bills. It's time to use all the levers we have to bear down on those bills, and do so by using the cheapest forms of generation, renewable generation. Ours is an evidence-based approach. Extend controlled pricing to all renewable generation, not just the 15% currently covered. A pot zero of renewable energy. Bring back market coupling with the EU for a free market in electricity transfers. Use technologies for flexible energy storage at home. Upgrade all homes to EPC Band C in the next 10 years with our emergency upgrade programme. And make all new homes zero carbon. Conference. Conservatives who cancelled that programme, originally one championed by ministers like our own Andrew Stunnell, have saddled homeowners with an extra £200 per year in energy bills as a result. Shame on them for doing so. This is our agenda. Better, cleaner, cheaper living for us and for our planet. And what's the alternative? The Tories have only one answer, and it's strikingly similar to reforms. Farage's latest party is 93% dependent in donations from the oil and gas magnates. So they want to frack, mine, and burn their way to power, and it's our job to stop them, conference. Fossil fuels cost more too. Anyone can see the rays of the sun and the breath of the wind are freely given. No, they're doing it for another reason. Their mates, including Vladimir Putin, will make stacks of money and laugh at the voters all the way to the bank. And it's only based on one thing. Their cause is based on fear. And what do we offer, fellow Liberal Democrats? We offer hope, not blind hope, but hope based on concrete evidence. We offer the experience of a leader who took the UK to the biggest wind energy generating nation on earth. Let's bring back free trade in energy with Europe. Let's deliver a new deal on renewables pricing. Let's store and generate energy more cheaply. Let's make our homes cleaner and warmer. Conference, let's align all these policies with one goal: to halve electricity bills. Ignore the cynics, forget the skeptics, lower bills, beat the blues, conference, vote for this amendment and for the motion as a whole.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Nathan Hunt to stand by, and I now call Councillor Keith Melton to move Amendment 2.
Thank you, Chair. For the avoidance of doubt, my tie is in relation to the English Roses, who are doing fabulously well in the rugby. Chair, fellow Liberal Democrats, we have before us an excellent motion on climate change, which is probably the key existential issue of our times. And we would like, with this amendment, to make it even better. The amendment is actually an amalgamation of one from the Green Liberal Democrats and one from Steve Darling, which explains why we're doing a double act, and Steve is summating on this one. I'm inordinately proud of the fact that the motion contains a reaffirmation in lines 17 to 20 of our belief that each generation is responsible for the fate of our planet, and by safeguarding the balance of nature and the environment for the continuum of life in all its forms. That's a sentence that I wrote in 1988 when we were putting the preamble to the Constitution together, and I handed the sentence on a scrap of paper to Tony Greaves, and that managed to find its way into the resolution, into the preamble, and it has been a source of motions and revolutions. It's been a source of motions and amendments for 20, 30 years since. As many of you will probably know, though, I have spent quite a lot of my political time railing against the damage we humans are doing, sort of doom and gloom on the environment. But for the most part, I've stopped doing that now, partly because climate change is already here. And the forebodings we had back in the day have come to pass. So you'll see from the policy paper that, as well as mitigation strategies to combat climate change, we have also started talking about adaptation strategy, and there are some issues in the policy document already. But we think there needs to be a stronger statement of adaptation for the policy to go forward. So you'll see in section 7 of the motion words referring to adaptation, resilient infrastructure and resilient standards. But we think section 7 needs strengthening. Researchers from the Imperial College London, comprising epidemiologists and climate scientists, have attributed 16,500 out of 24,400 heat deaths across Europe this year from June to August to the extra hot weather brought on by greenhouse gases. So let us be clear, human-made global heating caused 2 out of every 3 heat deaths in Europe this year, according to analysis of mortality across 850 of Europe's big cities. It's really the city dwellers who are most at risk. The temperature change in cities is an average of 2.2 degrees Celsius over the pre-industrial temperatures, and that's often due to the heat island effect in cities. And it's always the most vulnerable people of those living in housing, often multi-storey, where there's no built-in cooling capacity. Or indeed people in hospital who are already ill, and they suffer when the heat gets into hospitals which are not protected and ought to be, and therefore the adaptation is necessary now. You probably know that something like 1 in 5 of our population in this country live in areas controlled by Liberal Democrats. And we think that is significant because it's not just heat extremes, it's extremes of all kinds. Newark-on-Trent, which is where I come from, the extremes are in floods. In many areas, droughts and wildfires. And there are always things that local authorities can do. And our amendment speaks to some of those. So air quality in hospitals needs to be attended to.
Please draw your remarks to a close.
I'm sorry, I didn't realise I was rambling on. I do close. I say Liberal Democrats can act, we can lead, and we can succeed. So vote for the amendment and vote for the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just as a point, we've had far more cards than I will call speakers, so I am going to be very strict on lights, and I will be letting people down who unfortunately I can't call to speak. Could I ask Ros Savage to stand by, and I call Nathan Hunt from Huntingdon, who is moving Amendment 3.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Conference. When it comes to energy policy, we have so much to be proud of as a party. As someone who's worked in energy since I joined the industry at the age of 16, first as a substation apprentice and now as a grid engineer, I can see the impact our policies have had every single day. But there's always been one part of our energy policy that stuck out over the years, our opposition to nuclear energy. I'm glad to see the policy paper takes a step in the right direction here, supporting the development of small modular reactors, which is a great first step. But given the catastrophic climate crisis, we need to go further. When our future is at stake, we should not be taking any cards off the table. Over the years, our stance on full-scale nuclear has been loosely justified on 2 grounds: cost and construction time. However, I don't think those arguments stack up anymore, and a lot of the issues we face are uniquely British. I've got 3 arguments that I believe make that case. Firstly, the way we regulate nuclear energy is different from the rest of the world, which means that while British and rest of the world standards are both extraordinarily safe, standardised units have to be changed and bespokely designed for UK specs, causing delays, more design complexity, and raising costs. But this is something we can fix. We want greater regulatory alignment for so many industries, and that's something we can do for nuclear energy. Secondly, we're only just rebuilding our skills base for nuclear. Before ongoing projects started, Britain hadn't built a new nuclear power station in a generation. That investment will now have a massive ongoing impact, making future projects quicker and cheaper. As a party, do we really think we should be throwing that investment away? And third, project management gets thrown around a lot. I think there's a useful comparison here as well. HS2 has been a massive project management screw-up, but I don't see anyone calling for Britain to never build any railway ever again. Why should that argument be used for nuclear power? I want to stress this amendment is not about pitting renewables against nuclear. Yes, we need more and more renewables to help cut bills. Yes, renewables can play a leading role in a safe and secure energy system. We need both. But there's other engineering considerations we need to remember. And it's also worth remembering there's other parts to an economic case than pure power output. The policy paper highlights 2 of these in section 6.3.1, reliable output and system inertia. We need to be prepared for periods of low wind and sun, like we saw this summer, and while storage is part of the solution here, nuclear is as well. And system inertia is vital for keeping our grid stable. Large power stations which provide this inertia are vital for keeping the system safe and avoiding shocks that can avoid a blackout. This is more vital than ever, as we've seen this year the devastating impact that widespread blackouts can have following events in Spain and Portugal. In summary, full-scale nuclear is a vital part of a clean, safe and secure electricity system. But Conference, the best plea I can make is this. I am an environmentalist, I am an engineer, and I am someone who believes we need to build a better future, which is why I'm supporting this amendment. If you're any of those 3 things, I urge you to support Amendment 3. Thank you, Conference.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Ben Dempsey to stand by, and I now call Ros Savage, MP for South Cotswolds, to speak for the motion.
Conference, I am so proud to speak in support of this motion. We're living through the twin crises of our age, the climate emergency and the nature emergency. For too long, governments have treated these two as separate. Nature over here, climate over there, with no joined-up plan. The Liberal Democrats offer something different. We understand that nature and climate are two sides of the same coin. My own Climate and Nature Bill was founded on this principle that we cannot solve one without the other, and that resilience must be built alongside both. But conference, in my experience with the Climate and Nature Bill, it became apparent to me that this Labour government is nature blind. They overlook the vital role of nature in climate change mitigation and adaptation. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and Reform embrace climate denial and net zero scepticism, although Nigel Farage did tell me after the second reading of the Climate and Nature Bill that he loves nature. We live in hope. Only the Liberal Democrats have a joined-up plan, putting climate, nature and resilience at the heart of policy. This motion mainstreams that truth. Every department, every spending review, every law must be tested against climate and nature goals. But just as important as what we do is how we do it. We cannot impose green change on people. We must democratise action on climate and nature. We must work in partnership with communities, businesses and workers. We must bring people with us, especially those who feel left behind or who have lost faith in politics, so that they can see and feel for themselves the benefits of clean energy, warmer homes, lower bills and greater self-sufficiency. This is how we will future-proof against populism and net zero disbelievers. When people feel ownership of the change, when they can touch and taste the benefits in their own lives, no future government, no matter how willfully ignorant of climate change, will be able to roll it back. Conference, let's seize this moment to lead, to put climate, nature and resilience at the heart of government, to root green change in every single community, in hearts and minds across this country, and to unite climate justice with social justice. While others delay or deny, we will deliver. For people, for planet, for generations to come. Let's pass this motion.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Julia Needham-Watts to stand by, and I now call Ben Dempsey, who is our candidate for the Mayor of Sussex and a first-time speaker at conference.
Good afternoon, conference. And yes, as you just heard, I'm the candidate for the Mayor of Sussex election, which is taking place next May. And thank you. And I'd like to speak in favour of the motion and especially draw attention to point E on the importance of local government and 4C on the importance of the planning system. As others have said, very much like to emphasise the inextricable link between the nature crisis and the climate crisis. And I'd particularly like to draw attention to the role that mayors might be able to play in tackling that and to delivering this policy. As I'm sure many of you know, Sussex is a wonderful county. It's got a beautiful and diverse environment from the Downs to Ashdown Forest and a beautiful coastline from Rye all the way to Chichester. And although we're not in Sussex at the moment, I did have a dip with many of our wonderful MPs off the coast here this morning, and I'm just about warmed up since. But Sussex, like much of the country, is also a very busy place. And there's a serious lack of low-cost housing, and in particular, there's a serious lack of social housing. And we have a real challenge to deliver the communities and the services that people need, whilst also protecting our environment and delivering nature recovery. And as we all know, our services across the board, including especially transport, are creaking. Electing a Lib Dem mayor here in Sussex and elsewhere in the country would be a huge step towards delivering on that challenge. I think we should be properly embedding nature recovery into decision-making, weaving nature into our communities and into our society, particularly through our planning system. I think we should be emphasising the local nature recovery strategies that are being developed, and especially giving them actual weight in decision-making and in the planning system, so that rather than playing lip service to nature recovery, we're actually building it into our vision for the future. I want to make Sussex a nature superpower, and I think that if we elect Lib Dem mayors across the county and Lib Dem local authorities across the county, those are things that we can deliver. This motion would help in the delivery of that, and so I urge you to vote in favour of it, and also to support us all over the country for electing Lib Dem mayors wherever they're standing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Kevin Langford to stand by, and I now call Julia Needham-Watts from Twickenham and Richmond, who's speaking on lines 26 to 34, and is also a first-time speaker.
Thank you. It's a privilege to have been part of the working group for this paper, and I'm really grateful to others in the group for sharing their knowledge and expertise. My perspective comes from within local government, tackling the climate and nature crises as linked challenges, and working with our communities to build resilience, building the knowledge and ability to prepare for and recover better from the impacts of climate change. I'm Joint Deputy Leader and Environment Lead at the London Borough of Richmond-upon-Thames. Through this role, among other things, I'm involved in a range of flood resilience initiatives across London. But be it water, wind, heat, pests, none of these stop at administrative boundaries or political boundaries, and neither should we. Work is taking place on catchment-based, nature-based solutions to flooding, but local priorities compete for attention, and funding is always a battle. We need a better blueprint. In South West London, Lib Dems have 3 councils, 6 MPs, and a strong voice on the GLA. We're preparing for our local elections next May. The time is ripe, surely, to take control of more councils. No pressure, Merton. I'm coming to help you. But clear, thoughtful, evidence-based policies will help us on the doorsteps. Policies that are better for people, better for our places, and better for nature. Sometimes, as my friends in the Beverley Brook catchment will realise, there will be vocal opposition to new ways of doing things. There'll be scepticism, anxiety, disbelief. Yet nearby, there are homes and livelihoods at risk, increasingly so, as rainfall intensifies, falling on hard urban surfaces, meeting higher tides and river flows, as it does in Richmond. It's more important than ever to be in our communities, to listen as well as speak. When we do that, voices are raised in support of the bolder action we need. It comes back to our community policies, our community politics and activism. It's no longer a matter of just fixing the church roof and being likeable. We need to bring our communities with us, deliver more than a like-for-like repair on that roof. We need sustainable energy generation, not to mention capturing the water to irrigate community gardens as well. A local metaphor for a national truth. Whatever action we take, a golden thread of fairness runs throughout these policies, whether that's ensuring meaningful jobs for those currently in the fossil carbon sector, with funding and training to develop and embed the skills we'll need, or being mindful that when climate impacts hit, more vulnerable people must be prioritised. For example, with provision of shade where communities are most at risk of overheating. I welcome Amendment 1 addressing energy pricing and Amendment 2 providing detail of specific challenges and solutions around adaptation for more vulnerable people, as Keith has outlined. These align us with the compassionate,
please draw your remarks to a close,
evidence-based, forward-thinking approach that exemplifies what it is to be Liberal Democrat. Please support the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I please ask Jackie Bell to stand by, and I now call Kevin Langford from Kingston, who is speaking for the motion.
Thank you. I was also on the working party, and there are a few things I'd like to just draw out. We face a difficult problem. The world's on course for 3 degrees or so of warming, and this brings enormous risks. Just by cutting its own emissions, the UK can have little impact on this. Some other countries are making good progress, yet some definitely aren't. And the UK has already picked the low-hanging fruit in terms of its own decarbonisation. The problem hasn't changed since our previous policy in 2019, but the politics has. 6 years ago, we were trying to push the government harder and to avoid being outflanked by the Greens. Now, much more is at stake. The Tories have abandoned their previous support for decarbonisation, and it falls to us to be the main party with credible policies on this issue, which 2/3 of the electorate is worried about. The right's trying to make this a culture war, trying to make people feel that solar panels, active travel, electric vehicles are just not them, that they're being lied to, that action on climate change is an agenda pursued by a left-wing elite that does not share their values. So what should we do about this? 1, bring people with us by making it easier for them to make the changes that are needed and to deal with the consequences. Put things in terms that they care about. This is at the core of their policy, together with the link to nature. 2, explain what the UK can do and has done. The UK was a crucial player in getting to the Paris Agreement in 2015, and it's been an important contributor to developing and financing renewables and helping globally bring the cost down. This is why what we do in the UK has mattered and will matter in future, even if our consumption does only create 2% of the world's emissions. 3, treat those who disagree with us with respect, not contempt. Net zero in the UK is not a religion. It's a very important means to an end. Someone can believe it's not the right means without being either stupid or immoral. We can't control what reforms say, but we can control how we respond to it decently and honestly. And finally, as far as possible, be ourselves consistent, because this is what households and industry need to commit to decarbonisation. And this is what builds long-term credibility for the party and for those who are committed to mitigating climate change. The policy presented today helps us maintain and build the long-term electoral support for the vital role that the UK can play in combating climate change. Please support it.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Steve Darling to stand by, and I now call Jackie Bell from East Lothian, who's speaking for lines 114 to 115.
Conference. I'd like to expand on green energy infrastructure. Renewables are part of the climate change agenda, but projects need joined-up planning rather than the current piecemeal process which judges each application separately, leading to a cumulative impact on landscape, loss of agricultural land, environmental impact on tourist areas, and as they are industrialised and rural community life. In Scotland, size decides if applications are determined by local authorities or the Energy Consent Unit. Some rural communities feel overwhelmed by the volume of applications. Scottish community councils are small voluntary bodies who've had to gain experience in responding to applications, often with short timescales. East Lammermuir Community Council, in addition to existing structures, including Torness, currently has over a dozen projects under construction, consented, or in the planning process. For example, Springfield is a 450-acre solar farm and BESS on prime agricultural land that will dominate a conservation village. All residents and the community councils have objected, but are concerned that will be unheard despite the objections by the ECU, which historically has been consenting projects despite hundreds of objections. All the projects are coming in the same timescale. Where will the workers live? There'll be an impact on the dangerous A1 junctions and narrow rural roads. In Highland, a convention of 50 community councils has called for a halt to all consents, a national inquiry, a clear national plan, and an assessment of the economic impact on tourism. To date, the Energy Minister has not engaged with them. Battery storage is a particular concern. In Scotland, 3 times the number of BESS have been consented than are needed by the grid by 2030. At Kirkensey, 2 community councils felt unheard on a BESS on council-owned agricultural land close to homes when the council planning convener and leader refused to submit concerns to the consent unit because an inquiry would cost the council money. he dismissed fire safety concerns. They've now got a petition at Holyrood for clear guidelines on best sites in proximity to communities. The fire service must be statutory consultees and have procedures on tackling fires. Community benefits are a carrot, but some communities get lots of money, others none. East Lothian Community Council Association has now formed a community benefits SCIO to try and arrange fair distribution. Conference, former First Minister Humza Yousaf told me that green energy infrastructure should not be to the detriment of community life where it's sited. We need fair distribution, greater democracy in the planning process, and a fair...
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Tanya Cadles to stand by? And I now call Steve Darling from Torbay, who's speaking for Amendment 2.
Conference, I would like to thank Keith for proposing Amendment 2, and I'd like to thank all the speakers so far supporting this paper before us this afternoon. Tackling climate change is the biggest existential threat to society as a whole. Sadly, we have been late to the party as a planet on driving this agenda. And so we need to make sure that the issues in Amendment 2, where we're looking for cooling spaces, are tackled as a matter of urgency. As Liberal Democrats, supporting the most vulnerable in our society is part of our DNA. And that's why I'm pleased to make sure that this amendment goes forward. With our elderly population in Torbay, we have amongst the highest number of over 80s in our population. I know that whether it's our hospitals, whether it's our care homes, or cooling centres in our communities, we need to make sure that they're there as a matter of urgency to support those in our communities in need as climate change starts to bite. As MP for Torbay, I'm only too well aware of a resident who had a 62-week wait for an operation, and sadly it was cancelled due to the operating theatre being overheated. So, Conference, I call on you to back all the amendments before us today, but also to drive forward with this agenda as a matter of urgency, because our planet deserves it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Erin Gota to stand by? And I now call Tanya Cadles from Sheffield, who is speaking against lines 111 to 113 and is a first-time speaker.
Conference, before I get to the point, thank you everybody in this party. They're the only people who can pronounce my name correctly. And that is after 29 years in the UK. Well done. If this weren't my first conference, and if I'd not been a member only just a few months, I probably would have submitted an amendment to this motion. But forgive me for lack of experience, I can only speak against the lines I have concerns about. When I first read the motion, I thought, wow, what a wonderful, great motion. And then I got to lines 111 to 113 about small modular nuclear power stations. Really? All the usual concerns about nuclear aside, Starmer has just accepted US safety standards into the UK. Since when do Liberal Democrats trust Donald Trump? But most of all, and my main concern is, how can we provide protection for nuclear plants dotted around the country in populated, built-up areas from terrorist attacks? This is an invitation to villains from ISIS terrorists to Putin's Russia. Russia has attacked the UK before, using polonium and Novichok. Do you really think some explosives is a hurdle to him? Modular nuclear power stations up and down the country, in my mind, or sitting ducks to be turned into dirty bombs. Therefore, no, I'm not asking you to vote against an otherwise absolutely fantastic motion, but I urge the conference and the powers within the party to rethink lines 111 to 113. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. And just with regards to pronunciation, it helps that I'm Austrian, so it was easier to pronounce. Can I please ask Abriel Jerram to stand by, and I now call Aaron Goethe from Sutton Borough, who is opposing Amendment 1.
Good afternoon, Conference. I'm a first-time speaker. To introduce myself, I've spent the last 17 years working to support the climate and energy transition, including many years at the Independent Climate Change Committee. Recently, and more importantly, I was very proud to be part of the working group that compiled the background paper to this motion. I'm proud that we, the Lib Dems, recognise the climate and nature crises and are setting out a credible plan to tackle these crises in this motion. We can take this challenge to reform and to the Conservatives who would let down our climate, our nature and our economy. We also know that the majority of people want climate and nature action. People also care about energy costs, and this motion sets out some credible plans for reducing costs. In a time of populism, I believe it is important that we maintain our credibility. However, my desire to maintain credibility is why, Conference, I cannot support Amendment 1 and specifically Line 1. Amendment 1, Line 1, proposes to cut energy bills by half within a decade. Now, I do wish, in fact, I desperately desire we could halve energy bills in a decade. It would save homes and businesses approaching £40 billion per year. But unfortunately, this is not credible in my assessment, at least not without large government subsidy. To give some context of what some experts think, the independent, publicly owned operator of the UK energy system, NESO, recently concluded that the UK can reach clean power by 2030 with energy bills at roughly the same level as now, i.e. a long way short of halving energy bills. Now, I agree that we can go further with reducing energy bills, particularly by 2035. Indeed, behind the amendment are many useful proposals and numbers to inform this, but these numbers do not unfortunately underpin an aim to halve energy bills, with issues around double counting and how costs could have changed since 2022, particularly in terms of interest rates. If this amendment proposed cutting energy bills by a quarter, I would support it. It would be a positive and very ambitious proposal, and also a feasible goal. It would also still be a robust counter to Reform and the Conservatives who are arguing that energy bills will increase. However, in its current form, I do not see the goal as credible. You may ask whether we can reach this halving of energy bills by using government spending, and of course we could, but the additional cost would be in the range of £10 to £20 billion, akin to the amounts recently raised through the national insurance increase. I do not think that is the intention of this amendment. As such, and with regret, I cannot support Amendment 1, and I urge you to vote against Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Councillor Martin Horwood to stand by, and I now call Abriel Jerram from Durham, who's speaking for Amendment 3.
Conference. I want to begin with the one thing that is most important to me as Vice Chair of the Green Lib Dems: avoiding climate breakdown. If we sail over climate tipping point after climate tipping point, there is no coming back. A basic truth is that for the foreseeable future, humanity has only one planet. But here's another. We live in a democracy. If we want this just transition to happen, we must bring people with us. Otherwise, we will fail, and our planet and we will pay the price. Anytime someone promises, just like Labour did on cutting bills during the election, and fails to deliver, it is corrosive to the trust that people should have in those who want to save our planet. And it hands power to the forces of Farage and his cronies, who right now in Durham are undoing the great work that Lib Dems did in power. They are getting rid of solar panels, they're getting rid of conservation areas, geothermal energy projects, and so much more. And that's why I support Amendment 1. because it makes our plan felt by people in their lives. Cutting bills through clean energy is how we deliver a just transition and a healthier economy. So in that campaign, nuclear energy is a tool, nothing more and nothing less. And what does that tool do? It provides stability. It makes sure energy is always available, no matter the weather or the level of storage. It is the anchor that allows us to banish fossil fuels from our energy mix to good. Nuclear's competitor for this role is battery storage. And to be sure, as I am a chemist, and to me, it is an exciting area of innovation and is excellent for short-term grid balancing. Maybe for a while, maybe for 2, 4, even 6 hours with lithium batteries, but that's limited by the risk of thermal runaway, electrolyte decomposition, SEI layer growth, and lithium decomposition. There are even new technologies like vanadium redox batteries, which could work optimistically for about 100 hours, but they need massive amounts of electrolytes to go for more than a few days. So how strong does our anchor need to be for nuclear or for storage? Well, in last winter, just gone, December and January, we saw Duncan-Flounder conditions with low wind and low solar, where wind dropped to 6% of energy supply and solar was barely contributing at all. Here, we upped gas. In Germany, where they're getting rid of nuclear, they burned coal and even lignite. So nuclear is the tool that can anchor us to a future where burning fossil fuels in this country, and we can show the world too, is a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Rebecca Jones to stand by? And I now call Councillor Martin Horwood from Cheltenham, who's speaking against Amendment 3.
Conference, this excellent policy paper shows again that we are the Green Party that does its homework on climate science and economics. Since we took power in Gloucestershire in May, we've picked up many of the themes in here, from community energy to procurement, and the greater local powers proposed here would help us do more. But Nathan, I'm still wary of nuclear power, and I'm certainly voting against Amendment 3's odd idea of supporting it in principle. Why so cautious? Let's count 10 reasons. 1, nuclear power is old. Start-up technologies do need policy support and subsidy, but we've been waiting for nuclear to stop needing subsidy for 70 years. 2, it's expensive. In all that time, not one nuclear power station built on time and on budget. The cost of building Hinkley C has more than doubled to 46 billion. The taxpayer spends billions more on decommissioning afterwards, without which no sane investor would touch nuclear with a barge pole. 3, it's too slow for an emergency. Hinkley C will have taken the best part of 20 years to complete. It's years behind schedule, and that's not untypical. 4, nuclear is lower carbon than fossil fuel, but you still have to dig up uranium, often at huge environmental cost. That's why Greenland has banned uranium mining, probably another reason they annoy Trump so much. 5, nuclear leaves a toxic legacy to future generations about whom we know literally nothing. 1,000 years of radioactivity takes us as far from our society as the Vikings were from us. That's positively immoral. 6, after all these years, we still don't have a safe, permanent storage solution for that radioactive waste. Maybe there isn't one. 7, nuclear is inherently dangerous, a classic low probability but very high consequence risk. Chernobyl spread radiation across Europe and caused 4,000 cancer-related deaths, according to WHO. Chance of repeat, low, but not zero. And Tanya's right, Zaporizhzhia showed how malicious actors can add to that risk. Fukushima showed even nature can do too. 8, nuclear is intermittent. Reliable baseload, my eye. Maintenance, refueling, and safety checks take nuclear stations offline for weeks on end. 9, it poaches investment from genuinely clean green technologies like tidal, wind, solar, and the rest. They get more investable all the time. Beware a 70-year-old subsidized freeloader crowding them out. And 10th, not unimportantly for a political party, nuclear is consistently far less popular than renewable energy. I'd tough that out if I was sure it was safe and affordable, as the motion says. But for reasons 1 to 9 above, I fear it's not. Please support the reasonable compromise wording in the motion, but vote against Amendment 3. Thank you.
Could I please ask Andrew Haldane to stand by, and I now call Rebecca Jones from Islington Borough to speak for Amendment 3.
The question of nuclear or no nuclear is often a topic of huge debate and controversy. Critics will often argue that nuclear power is inefficient, unsafe, and unnecessary. In my speech, I hope to explain why I disagree with these points. First, is it inefficient? Well, no. Nuclear in the UK has been unique compared to a lot of the world. In most reactors across the world, they tend to use water-cooled reactors. In the UK, we use gas-cooled ones, first with Magnox, more recently AGR. More recently is quite relative, they're quite old now as well. Even we are moving over to pressurised water reactors, such as Hinkley as well. As technology continues to increase, these reactors will only grow more efficient. It's worth remembering that many of the original reactors were built with people simply pushing tubes of radioactive material through pipes. Sizewell B, for example, generates 67 million kilowatt hours per year compared to roughly 6 kilowatt hours per wind turbine per year. Second, is it unsafe? Again, no. Modern reactors are usually built with negative void coefficients, or if the worst was to happen and the operators would begin to lose control of the reactor, it would naturally reduce reactivity as the water boils into steam. When people say they are afraid of nuclear reactors, they point to two examples, as the previous speaker did, Chernobyl and Fukushima. In Chernobyl, they had a positive void coefficient with the expressed intention of being cheaper to build. Modern reactors are not built like this. Fukushima, a natural earthquake was its downfall. It's not something in the UK we're known to have particularly frequently, especially at the scale that Japan has. Finally, is nuclear unnecessary? Far from it. We all know that we need a stable base power generation system. Renewables, such as wind turbines and solar, can't fulfill that part of the role. Will there be renewables at some point in the future? I don't think the tech is there right now, and we need to build nuclear power now to fulfill that role. In the UK, and historically in the UK, that has been gas, that has been coal, both terrible for atmosphere and pollutes it, drives up climate change in ways nuclear doesn't. I believe nuclear must therefore fulfill this role until we're able to increase that technology, such as with tidal energy. So the choice is clear. We need to maintain our nuclear energy and continue building nuclear until we get to a point where it can be replaced far in the future. But that is not right now. So please vote for Amendment 3 and for the motion as amended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Lucas North to stand by, and I now call Andrew Haldane from Cheshire East to speak against Amendment 3.
Conference, I can accept that pressures from data centres, from green hydrogen, from steel and other high usage industries may mean that we need to look around for additional sources of energy. But the answer is actually there in the paper, where it mentions early stage technologies. And I would like to focus on, particularly on one of those, tidal range energy. Now, these are not rocket science. Tidal range energy is based on the ebb and flow of the tide. It's based on essentially hydroelectric power with a seawall instead of a dam. That's what it boils down to. A scheme has been running in France for 60 years. It's likely to run for another 60, and it produces the cheapest energy available in the French market. By a freak of nature, our Irish sea coasts have the highest tidal ranges in the world. Can you imagine any other country not exploiting that? That tide flows whenever there's whatever the state of the wind or the state of the sun. It flows steadily. It varies slightly with the ebb and flow of the tide, but to equalize that out and produce something close to a grid stability, we can use fairly limited storage in order to smooth the output. The seawalls that you need to build can be prefabricated on land and fitted with all the turbines and everything we need. Once they're in place, they can contribute to coastal defence. You can even run transport systems across the top of them. If we build a series of them, there's a chance to have great economies of scale in production. The only problem that we've had so far with these schemes is that the get in, get rich quick and get out quick model of financing doesn't apply very well to something that can run for 100 years. The paper mentions looking at alternative forms of finance. It looks at alternative forms of charging. High energy usage, close to these sorts of systems, can run 24/7 and take advantage of cheap electricity at the nighttime tides with limited storage of their own. To me, conference, before we start rushing to nuclear, we need to look for better solutions. We have one in marine energy. I urge you to support the motion and to support Amendments 1 and 2, but to vote against Amendment 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Vera Hobhouse to stand by, and I now call Lucas North from Tameside to speak for Amendment 3.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking the Federal Policy Committee and all those who were involved in creating this policy paper. I know that that is a phenomenal amount of work, and any of my remarks and the remarks of the people on the same side of this debate as me are not meant to undermine that in any way. We are genuinely so thankful for all you've done. Conference, we all agree that the climate crisis is the defining challenge of our age. We have set ambitious targets for net zero, but to meet them we need more than aspiration. We need solutions that are clean, reliable, and grounded in evidence. That is why I'm in favour of nuclear power. Nuclear is not the enemy of renewables, it is their ally. Wind and solar are vital, but they are intermittent. When the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, nuclear provides the constant low-carbon backbone that keeps our lights on and our homes warm. And let's be clear, modern nuclear is safe. It produces less waste than many fear, and it has one of our lowest carbon footprints of any energy source. Countries like France have shown that nuclear can deliver secure, affordable electricity while cutting dependence on fossil fuels. Now, I'll concede that nuclear power is not instant. If we start building a nuclear power plant tomorrow, it will not be producing energy by the end of the week. But the good news is we will still need clean energy in 10 years, in 20 years, and in 30 years' time. Sorry, my phone's locked. And for Britain, it means jobs. Highly skilled, future-proof employment in engineering, science, and construction. It means energy independence, reducing reliance on imported gas at the mercy of global prices and geopolitics. As Liberal Democrats, we pride ourselves on evidence-based policy, on fairness to future generations, and on taking bold but responsible action. Supporting nuclear alongside renewables is the rational, green, and liberal path to net zero. Conference, if we are serious about tackling climate change, we cannot afford to close the door on one of the most effective tools we have. Let's choose clean energy, secure energy, and fair energy. Let's choose nuclear power as part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Luke Taylor to stand by, and I now call Vera Hobhouse, MP for Bath, to speak against Amendment 3.
Conference, at the heart of the energy challenge is decentralization. Not only must we move away entirely from carbon fuels, we must completely change how we transmit and distribute energy. No longer will we have a few big power stations connected to the main grid, which is like a ring road from which the smaller networks then take the energy to distribute to our homes and businesses. Instead, we will have a multitude of energy generators, from big renewables to smaller community installations, down to micro generation from millions of homes and businesses. This new decentralized system is far more difficult to model and plan for. The new systems operator, NESO, now in government hands, is trying to get to grips with this new world of decentralized energy, but the old lobbies are still very vocal. The term baseload is talked about as a holy grail for energy security. The term baseload was created by the nuclear energy, as nuclear is the ultimate baseload that has to run 24/7, irrespective of demand, because it cannot be switched off and on. But Conference, the baseload of our future must be renewables as the cheapest form of energy, because once installed, they generate electricity at almost no cost, unlike fossil fuels or nuclear. The only drawback of renewables is their variability. But nuclear is no solution to cover variability. You can't switch it off and on. On small modular reactors, or SMRs, the only difference is that they are smaller, and the parts are manufactured in factories which can be repeated and which, in theory, could bring down costs and timescales for delivery. But we just had an inquiry in our select committee, and honestly, they are still massive installations. The cost of nuclear is still substantially higher than the cost of renewables. SMRs might have a place powering big data centers or energy-hungry industries 24/7, but I see them more as off-grid. Conference, we must not lose sight that the future of British energy is renewables. They're the cheapest and safest form of energy. That is why we Liberal Democrats supported renewables ahead of any other technologies. If you want more nuclear, there will be less support for renewables. These are the choices. Please support the motions, but reject Amendment 3.
Thank you very much. Can I please ask Christine Jardine to stand by, and I now call Luke Taylor, MP for Sutton and Cheam, to speak for Amendment 3.
Thank you very much. So, Conference, I hear that there is no ceiling on our ambition for ourselves and for our country. And that's because we have something that the other parties don't, a positive vision of the future. This policy paper would deliver a positive, liberal, environmental future, and we must back it, we must campaign on it, and we must make it a reality. But doing it justice means not forgetting the vision, openness and pragmatism, which is why I want you to support Amendment 3 so that we don't discard what could be a hugely important tool in our toolbox. I'm not convinced by the claim that there is no economic case for new, large nuclear power stations. An energy and investment strategy that focuses solely on SMRs for future nuclear energy cannot and will not meet the great challenge presented to our generation. It is not ambitious enough, and it doesn't recognise the opportunities that larger nuclear power projects can still present for the next generation, if the economic case is right. And most worryingly of all, it will put Britain in a position whereby we actively tie our hands behind our back as we go into conversations with corporations, with other nations and with the British people. By ruling out commissioning a source of clean, green energy, if we're truly serious, if we're truly ambitious, and if we are truly environmentalists, why would we do that? So I'm going to ask you to say yes if, and embrace my yiffy ideology. Yes, if the economic case can be made. Yes, if impact on communities can be mitigated. And yes, if we can answer the question of how our engineers, our project managers and our planners will learn from how large-scale projects like Sizewell C have struggled. Issues with project management, workforce and industrial strategy, and let's be frank, over-optimistic budgeting are not exclusive to nuclear energy projects, but they've dogged everything from high-speed rail to building new hospitals. But we do not say, do not do those things. We can't just throw our hands up and rule out potentially vital, large nuclear projects that could save our bacon in the long run, because we think we're not good at it or it will be too hard. And look, if you object to nuclear energy on principle, I'm not going to convince you. But I remind you, this is not about giving nuclear a blank check, nor doing any of this at the expense of world-leading solar, wind and tidal. It's about giving ourselves every option and a fighting chance to bring down bills, fix the climate crisis and deliver on that liberal vision. So please support Amendment 3 and support the amended motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Gideon Amos to stand by, and I now call Christine Jardine from Edinburgh West, who's speaking for the amendment. Apologies, motion.
Thank you, Nick. You gave me a bit of a fright there. I wasn't planning to speak about nuclear. Is everybody okay with that? Good. So, can I just start off by thanking Pippa for this paper? I know the work that goes into producing a policy paper and a motion for conference, and she's done a spectacular job with this. Can I also thank her for something very specific in that she came and consulted the Scottish MPs and talked to us. Because you see, while energy is something which affects us all, we all use, we all think about every day, and we all want to see a cleaner, greener energy system in this country. To us in Scotland, it's much more than that. It can be our livelihoods. It can be our families' futures. It can be how we plan, how we live our lives, particularly in the northeast of Scotland. And we've worked very hard at moving towards a transition to a green economy. And we need our politicians to listen to us and work with us. And that is what Pippa has done for me with this paper. And she's done so much more than the current Secretary of State for Energy, Ed Miliband, who once described me to a group of people recently as his lift buddy. His office was then directly above mine in Portcullis House, and it was where we occasionally bumped into each other. And for 3 floors, we would discuss energy. And while we agreed on the need for change, we tended to differ on how and how quickly. For me, energy security and employment and keeping the lights on are key. But add to that the concerns that Chinese involvement in and control of wind farm facilities might threaten our energy security and therefore our national security. And it seems the future picture of our energy is far from clear. We can argue about nuclear, we can argue about how we do it, but moving forward we have to be absolutely sure that we do not hand control of wind farms, solar panels, nuclear development to the hands of a foreign power who might damage us. Now, while I'm Scottish and we do have a slightly nuanced opinion, Offshore Energy UK, which used to be offshore oil and gas, is in itself indicative of the move to a more open-minded approach throughout the energy industry. And we need to harness that. We need to work with them. They're concerned about the supply chain. They are concerned about the support, but they are concerned more than anything else that their politicians listen to them and come up with a clear strategy. Conference, I think that is what Pippa has done with this paper. So please, support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Jocelyn Palmer to stand by and I now call Gideon Amos, spokesperson for Housing and Planning, to summate Amendment 1.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Conference. Thank you for all the contributions and thank you to the support from Pippa, our energy spokesperson for Amendment 1, from Julia, from Kevin and Steve for their support for the amendment. Aaron makes some excellent points. We do need to be held to a high standard on the credibility of our evidence. That's why our projections are based on conservative, with a small c, estimates from the research for a 6-point plan. In the 3 minutes available, Nick, I wasn't able to go through all the aspects of the plan, but there are 6 points to it. And just as a couple of examples, we took the lower estimate for the pot zero estimates. Those figures have been revised by researchers, and we've taken the lower estimate there. We've taken the lower estimate for the contribution to come from flexible energy use. And the one source that was put forward that indicated that it would be difficult to achieve a halving of electricity bills by in the next 10 years was a source based on current government assumptions. Now, we're more ambitious than this current government conference. We are a Liberal Democrat government in waiting. We have an agenda to put forward. That includes a massive £8.4 billion capital investment in insulating our homes and on investment in renewables. That includes restoring our trade in energy with Europe. That includes extending contracts for difference for another 10 years. None of those are in current government estimates or current estimates. So we've taken the lower estimates. But if politics is the art of the possible, Conference, then I urge you to hold your MPs, hold your party accountable to deliver a halving of energy bills in 10 years. We've revised the figures as the research has evolved. We will no doubt have to revise them again. But this is a commitment to people. We have to make a transition, a just transition, and we have to win those arguments with people in communities and on the doorstep. That means we have to halve energy bills. We have to make it an article of our policy. Please support Amendment 1.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Duncan Brack to stand by and I now call Jocelyn Palmer from Harrow to summate on Amendment 3.
Britain is a world leader in renewable energy, and that's something we, as Liberal Democrats, should be so proud of, because so many of the policies that made that possible started with us, in government delivering real change. When Ed Davey was Energy Secretary, we more than doubled Britain's renewable power. We secured record investment in wind and solar, and we helped launch the world's first green investment bank. That's a legacy to be proud of, not just because it cut emissions, because it created jobs, cut bills, and made Britain safer and more secure. But if we're serious about reaching net zero, and we are, we need to be serious about nuclear energy too. This isn't just about the electricity it generates, it's about reliability, stability and security. Both Ross and Julia were right to talk about how important resilience is in our energy system. And these aren't just abstract technicalities. There's a difference between the light staying on or going out. Just look at the chaos caused by the blackout in Portugal earlier this year. Wind and solar are doing incredible work, already providing over 40% of our electricity. But we know what happens when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. We fall back on gas. In 2023, gas still made up nearly a third of our electricity supply. We cannot and must not keep relying on fossil fuels to fill in these gaps. And that's why nuclear must be part of the mix. This isn't about pitting renewables against nuclear, it's about putting them alongside each other. A strong, low-carbon backbone to a clean energy future. Nuclear provides round-the-clock power. It supports grid stability, and it delivers system inertia. That provides that resilience we so desperately need. And this isn't about nostalgia for the past, it's about a serious plan for the future. Taking large-scale nuclear off the table now, the middle of a climate emergency, would be reckless. Now let me address some of the concerns raised in this debate so far. On waste, modern reactors produce far less waste than many assume, and we already have the expertise to manage it safely. Compare that to the daily, uncontained damage done by fossil fuel emissions. On cost, yes, nuclear is capital intensive, but it delivers value for decades. When properly planned and delivered, it is one of the most cost-effective paths to low carbon power. Nuclear uses really, really small amounts of fuel. You could get all the energy you needed in your life from the fuel the size of a Coke can. People may argue that nuclear takes a long time to build. And yes, that's true. But we need to be planning for the 2030s and the 2040s now, not just reacting to short-term pressures. Delaying investment today only deepens the crisis tomorrow. And let's not forget, had the Conservative government not delayed projects like Sizewell C, that clean power could already be coming online now. Modern nuclear technology is safer than ever. We're on the third and fourth generation of nuclear reactors now with rigorous safety standards and passive safety systems to prevent the kinds of failures seen decades ago. The UK has a long, proud record of nuclear safety. Our regulators are independent, trusted, and some of the most respected in the world. And let's not forget the economic benefits. Building a single new nuclear power plant can support over 10,000 skilled jobs and spark thousands more in local economies and supply chains. This isn't just energy policy, it's an industrial strategy for a fairer, greener Britain. Of course, nuclear isn't perfect. No energy source is. What this amendment does is keep every serious option on the table. And if we're serious about decarbonisation, as Luke so powerfully said, we cannot afford to rule out what works. The Conservatives spent 14 years dragging their feet, while bills soared and emissions stayed high. And Labour are still dithering. They claim they back nuclear, but where's the investment? Where is the urgency? And Reform say they'd scrap net zero altogether and send us back to the smog and short-term thinking of the past. With this amendment and this paper, the Liberal Democrats offer a clear, credible path forward. Serious about climate action, serious about energy security, serious about fairness. This is about whether families can heat their homes in winter, whether young people can have good jobs in clean industries, and whether we have the courage to make tough, necessary choices. One day our children will ask what we did to stop climate change. Will we say we turned down clean, reliable energy because it wasn't perfect? Or will we say we faced the facts, acted with integrity, and did what is right, even if it wasn't politically easy? Conference, let's be the party that doesn't just talk about the future, we build it. Back this amendment.
Thank you very much. Could I please call Duncan Brack, the chair of the Policy Working Group, to summate the motion?
Conference, I want to thank everyone who played a part in putting this paper together. Alexander Payne at HQ, Pippa Halings, our excellent spokesperson, and most importantly, all the members of the Policy Working Group, probably the best Policy Working Group I've ever been involved in, and in particular Kevin Langford, our indispensable Vice Chair. For People, for Planet is a long paper because, of course, climate change affects so many different areas of policy. It includes proposals for cutting greenhouse gases in every part of our economy, from power generation, where rapid progress is most achievable, from heat in buildings and road transport, which will take longer. We recognise the hard-to-treat sectors, where emissions can be cut but not eliminated entirely. Industry, aviation, agriculture. So we put forward proposals to draw carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and sequester it in forests or in underground storage. And what's just as important, we describe the framework that is needed for decision makers to ensure that every policy, every regulation, every decision to invest or build or purchase is taken with the aim of cutting the impact on global heating. So as Ros Savage highlighted, the paper sets out proposals for a strong voice for climate, nature and resilience policy at the heart of national government, which Liberal Democrat ministers delivered during the coalition, but which has been badly lacking since. But by decision makers, I don't just mean national government. We see a key role for local government, as Ben Dempsey talked about, with additional powers and responsibilities and a statutory duty to develop climate, nature and resilience strategies. And decision makers are also businesses, investors, communities, households, individuals. We put forward proposals for the regulation of financial markets, for innovation and skills, and a new drive for international collaboration, including building a much stronger relationship with the EU. We place a far higher priority than recent governments on adaptation, measures to protect communities against the impacts of climate change, flooding, wildfires, heat stress. Amendment 2 adds valuable detail to what's in the paper, and we are happy to accept it. At the heart of the Liberal Democrat approach is a commitment always to putting people first. Putting people first because you don't embed change for the long term by imposing measures on communities against their will. We will make sure that policies are developed and deployed in partnership with those they affect at national and local levels, building trust, legitimacy and resilience against future political reversal. Putting people first, because however worried people are about climate change, you can't expect everyone to be able to afford the transition. As Kevin Langford said, we would increase the support available for home energy improvements and make them free for low-income households and set a social electricity tariff. Putting people first, because while the transition to net zero will open up new opportunities for growth and employment in the green economy, it will also cost jobs in fossil fuel industries. We must never see a repeat of the devastation of the coal mining regions in the 1980s. So we would create a Just Transition Commission and provide funding support for vulnerable communities. Probably the most critical single proposal in this paper is bringing down the price of electricity to increase the incentives to switch to electric heating and electric vehicles. A heat pump is about 4 times as efficient as a gas boiler, but electricity currently costs about 4 times as much. So uptake is proving far too slow. We ran out of time to develop detailed proposals in this paper, so we're happy to accept Amendment 1, though this is an area that will need further work, and Aaron Gota made some good points about the basis of Amendment 1, but the aim, I think, is correct. Daisy Cooper's speech this morning includes further proposals on green energy, a good example of climate policy informing Treasury thinking, at least in this party. And of course, expanding renewables and cutting the price of electricity reduces the UK's dependence on expensive imported gas. It delivers energy security and cleaner air, it tackles fuel poverty, and it helps build popular support for ambitious climate policy. We ask you, however, to vote against Amendment 3, because what it proposes will not cut the price of electricity. Now, let's be clear what the amendment says. It is not about small modular reactors. As you can see in lines 111 to 113 of the motion, the paper already supports the rollout of SMRs if they are cost-effective and safe. The amendment does not change that, apart from deleting those caveats, implying that they support SMRs even if they are not cost-effective and safe. No, the key part of the amendment, the real difference from the paper, lies in its support for more large nuclear stations, like the ones now being built at Hinkley Point and Sizewell. Hinkley Point C, let's remember, was originally supposed to be finished by 2017, but now it's due to be finished by 2031, probably not even by then. Its cost has gone up from £18 billion to £25 billion to now at least £46 billion. Sizewell C will be the same story. Its original cost estimate was £20 billion. When the government finally gave the go-ahead 2 months ago, this had risen to £34 billion. Power generation is supposed to start in the mid-2030s. The 2 things we can be absolutely certain of is that Sizewell C will not be generating in 10 years' time, and it will cost a lot more than £34 billion. Because these are not occasional hiccups. This is a core characteristic of the nuclear industry. New technologies generally start off expensive and get cheaper over time as people learn to make them better and produce them at scale. Wind and solar are classic examples. During the 2010s, the global average cost of offshore wind fell by 60% and solar PV by 88%. Nuclear power is exactly the reverse. In all countries, apart from Korea, where the data is suspect, the cost has increased over time, sometimes spectacularly so. Nathan Hunt was wrong. This is not just a British problem. But in the UK, estimated real costs of large nuclear have tripled over the last 15 years. One of the reasons, of course, is you can't build them at scale on an assembly line. Each one has to be designed individually. This is why this party has always opposed the construction of new nuclear power stations. I know, for a few years, we supported them if they could be built without public subsidy, but that's the same as opposing them, because no nuclear station has ever been built in the UK without public subsidy. I recognise that some people are opposed to nuclear because of the dangers of catastrophic accident or terrorist action, like Tanya mentioned and Martin, the cost of decommissioning and the lack of any long-term solution to the disposal of nuclear waste, and I sympathise. For me and for the party, it has always been the cost. Joshan was wrong. Nuclear is the least cost-effective non-fossil option. And that is why this paper cautiously supports SMRs, since their components can be built in a factory and assembled on site, possibly leading to significant cost reductions. Now, no one has yet built an SMR, and I am sceptical of the nuclear industry's ability to deliver what they promise, but the climate challenge is so urgent that I agree we need to give them a chance. But this argument does not apply to large nuclear stations. I agree with all the calls for evidence-based policy. There is no evidence anywhere at all to suggest that costs will come down, and every reason to think they will continue to go up. And these costs will be loaded onto taxpayers and bill payers, pushing up electricity prices. And as Vera and Martin argued, investment capital and public funds are not unlimited. Investment in nuclear will crowd out investment in renewables and storage and everything else. The final argument for nuclear is that it's needed to balance the system on days when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining. But it isn't. Almost every month, another study appears which shows the rapidly widening range of alternatives: interconnectors, flexible demand response, a few gas plants fitted with carbon capture technology, tidal, as Andrew Haldane mentioned, but mainly storage. Now, as well as batteries, where costs have fallen by 97% over the last 20 years, there's a widening range of options for longer-term storage. Flow batteries, compressed air, pumped hydro, liquid air, hydrogen, and more. As the Royal Society concluded 2 years ago, and I quote, "In 2050, Great Britain's demand for electricity could be met by wind and solar energy supported by large-scale storage. Including steady nuclear supply would increase costs." A German Academy study earlier this year concluded that a secure energy supply is possible without the involvement of baseload power plants at all, like nuclear. Gideon Amos made the case for Amendment 1 for the need to reduce electricity prices, and I hope you vote for it. But why then should anyone want to vote logically for Amendment 3, which will inevitably push them up? If SMRs are safe and cost-effective, they are the future of the nuclear industry, not the hugely costly dinosaur technology that is large nuclear. The paper already supports SMRs. We do not need large nuclear, and we do not need Amendment 3. Please vote against it. Conference. Humanity is destabilizing the Earth's climate at frightening speed. When I was born, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was 317 parts per million. By the end of last year, it had reached 423, and the increase over the previous 12 months was the largest ever recorded. When I was born, the global temperature was exactly the average for the period 1950 to 1980. Now it's over 1 degree higher. We know that the more the climate warms above 1.5 degrees, the greater the chance of catastrophic impacts. But on current trends, we're headed for at least 2.5 by the end of the century. We are the last generation that can stop this slide to disaster. We know how to cut emissions, and we are lucky enough to live in a country that has the potential to show the world how it can be done, because Britain has real strengths in the industries we need for a carbon-free future: green energy, green transport, green finance. This is not just about the climate, it's about jobs and prosperity and security, and it's about nature. But the transition is not going fast enough. We need greater ambition, we need more generous support, and we need a government that puts people first. We need the Liberal Democrats. Please vote against Amendment 3, please vote for this motion, and be proud of everything in this paper. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Conference. We're now going to move on to a series of 4 votes. For those online, the online voting on the amendments is already open. So we're going to start with, logically, Amendment 1. So those in favour of Amendment 1, please raise your voting passes. Thank you very much. And those against? Thank you. We now move on to a vote on Amendment 2. Those in favour of Amendment 2, please raise your passes. And those against? Thank you. Now we move on to Amendment 3. Those in favour of Amendment 3, please raise your passes. Thank you very much. And those against? Thank you very much. I'm just going to wait for the online vote to catch up. Okay, thank you very much. Amendment 1 has passed, Amendment 2 has passed, Amendment 3 has failed. We now move on to a vote on the motion as amended by Amendments 1 and 2. Can I see those cards in favour of the motion? Please raise your passes. We're moving on to a vote on the motion as amended by Amendment 1 and 2. Passes in favour of the motion. Thank you very much. And those against? Thank you. That motion has passed as amended by Amendments 1 and 2. With regards to requests for a counted vote, there were not the requisite people standing in the auditorium, so therefore that was not valid. Thank you very much to my aides Sam, Barrett, Callum Robinson, Paul McGarry. Thank you to our BSL interpreters, and I hand over to Belinda Brooks-Gordon. Thank you.
Conference, may I ask you to clear the hall quickly if you're leaving and to take your seats quickly if you're wishing to come in for F29. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, conference. Welcome to F28, which you'll find on page 58 and 59 of your conference agenda. May I remind all speakers to keep to time, and I'll ask Chris Northwood from Manchester, please, to stand by, and call Anthony Hook, Chair of Federal Council, to propose the motion.
Thank you, Belinda. Conference, this is a constitutional amendment requested by many members of the Federal Council and others, and which we hope will meet with your approval. We are asking to uphold and apply the principle that committees generally make decisions by majority vote, for the Federal Council to be treated similarly in that regard to other committees, and to remove the current situation where a majority, even a large majority of those present and voting, may not be enough for the Federal Council to make an effective decision. Conference has charged the Federal Council with reviewing Federal Board decisions. This was done a few years ago in the context of the Board being made much smaller than it had been hitherto. You have empowered the Council to call in and potentially overturn Board decisions. This power has been used very sparingly, and rightly so. However, to overturn currently requires 26 of 40, so about 2/3 of members, to be present and voting in favour of overturning. Now, some seats and posts on the Council are often temporarily vacant, and some members, for example MPs, rarely attend for entirely understandable reasons. So in practice, it's actually more like 3/4 or 4/5. This can and has led to a situation where a majority of Federal Council members, or even a large majority of those attending, vote to overturn, but it's not actually enough because it's fewer than 26. This is democratically unattractive in our view, and we say the Federal Council should make decisions on a majority basis. Some may say, well, what about a safeguard to make sure a few people aren't making a decision? Quite right. Many committees have a quorum of 1/3 present to take a decision. This amendment goes further than that. It would propose that it would still have to be at least 13, not only present, but also voting for the decision to count. And that is an ample safeguard against decisions being taken too lightly. And as I end my time as the Federal Council's first chair, I'd be very grateful if you would make this reform for all of my successors. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Could I ask Simon McGrath from Merton Borough please to stand by? And I call Chris Northwood from Manchester to speak. And Chris is speaking against the motion.
Conference. In my role as a councillor in Manchester, I sit on our Economy and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee. I am the only Liberal Democrat on this committee, with the chair and all but one other member being Labour. In this committee, we work constructively to exercise the role entrusted to us to oversee the actions of the executive and officers to make our city better. I like being on this committee, and despite the political differences with my Labour colleagues, we all work quite well together and have made a difference with the policies for our city. Federal Council is supposed to be a scrutiny committee for the board. I sit on Federal Council, but if your basis, like mine, is in Local Government Scrutiny Committee, your experience on Federal Council would make you unrecognisable as a scrutiny committee. Too many council members do not exercise a scrutiny function. Instead, they focus on forwarding their own political agenda, rehashing arguments better had elsewhere and in other committees, and that are completely irrelevant in scrutinising the work of the board. In my experience, the culture of council is toxic. From my perspective, it seems there are too many council members there purely to beat the board and president with a stick. Surely we shouldn't be giving them an easy time, and I've certainly had some strong words to remark myself. But we are supposed to be in the same party and leading that party, not rehashing personal politics and grievances in the power we have available to us. There has been little appetite in assessing broader party strategy on council and using the soft power and influence that a scrutiny committee should have. Instead, there has been a lot of focus on the hard power of the vetoing of board decisions. It is for these reasons and my experience of Federal Council that I'm asking you to join me in voting against this constitutional amendment. One of the most important parts of a scrutiny committee is the soft power, being listened to as a wider set of viewpoints outside a more siloed board and influencing their activity through soft power. There have been a few wins in this regard. In fact, all of the successes that we've had as council have been through soft power, but attempts to do more proactive scrutiny, for example, of board's performance against digital strategy, has been frustrated, and that is quite frustrating, but it's perhaps understandable given the toxic culture that council has fostered. In council, there is still too much focus on the hard power of the veto. The veto should be a last resort. This amendment enshrines and empowers what is broken by giving more hard power to council, hard power that will just simply be used as a greater stick to beat the board with. Federal Council needs a proper review of its governance structure and how to be a better check and balance to the board. It is not as effective as this party deserves. This amendment, well-meaning as it is at face value, is an attempt to work around low attendance levels at council meetings. But council needs a proper fix, not a workaround. It's a sticking plaster that emboldens the toxicity of council and will only make it worse. It needs rejecting, and the problems of council must be fully faced by committee and solved. Conference, take it from someone who serves on federal council, this amendment will not result in better governance of our party. Reject this motion and demand that the new council gets the House in order and demonstrates it can be trusted before asking for more hard power. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Could I call Simon McGrath, please, from Merton Borough, and ask Stephen Robinson from Chelmsford, Malden and Braintree to please stand by.
Thank you. Conference, first of all, can I say I agree with everything that Chris has just said. I have a unique experience. I have been on the Federal Council from when it was first formed up until May. Up in May, there was a recount as somebody was no longer eligible to be a member of the Federal Board as the councillor rep on the board, and I was then elected. So I've seen it from the point of view of the council and the board, and I previously served on the old board. I am very, very keen on council being able to scrutinise the decisions of the board and the longer-term plans, as Chris talked about. There have only been 2 items called in by the Federal Council in the 2 and a bit years that I was on it, and both of which were called in, organised by me. One was on the party's use of non-disclosure agreements, and the other one was on presidential expenses. So I'm very committed, as a member of the council, to allowing it to work properly. But this amendment is not the right one, and the reason it isn't the right one is it will make it far too easy for Federal Council to engage in trying to disagree with every decision of the Federal Board. The other thing to bear in mind is the Federal Board has a number of other committees reporting to it, so an awful lot of things come under the remit of the Federal Board that the Federal Council might be then able to try and overturn with a pretty small number of people. The real problem with the Federal Council, and Chris made these points really well, is hardly anybody turns up to it. Tiny numbers of people turn up to it. Lots of the members don't bother ever to turn up to it. The real question is, why are people sitting on a committee that they can't be bothered to turn up to? That's why we need a proper review. We need a proper scrutiny committee for this party, but please do not make this change, which will make it far too easy for the Federal Council to continually try to overturn decisions of the Federal Board. So please vote against this proposal. Thank you.
Could I ask Lucas North, please, to stand by, and I call Stephen Robinson from Chelmsford, Malden and Braintree. And Stephen is also speaking against the amendment.
Afternoon, Conference. Thank you for staying for this bit of party business. There's nothing some Lib Dems like more than a constitutional amendment. I last spoke here from this platform, there are rather more in the room, for Amendment 1 to support a national housing target, and you did that. Thank you very much. This isn't quite that important, but it is about the efficiency of our decision-making. I moved the original motion to create Federal Council. It was part of trying to make our party process more efficient, more effective. It was created to stop Federal Board from doing things that a large part of the membership might think was daft or silly, unwise or misguided. It wasn't created to second-guess every decision of Federal Board. Having seen how the Federal Council operates, I think you made the right decision when setting it up. There have been a couple of occasions in the last 2 years when the call-in threshold wasn't actually reached, but the President nevertheless attended, and effectively we had a call-in scrutiny anyway. So actually, I think the process is working fairly well. So I am asking you to vote against the proposal to reduce the Federal Council threshold. At the moment, as Anthony said, 2/3 are required to call something in. And this means a broad consensus has to be found and that the board has done something particularly daft. The proposed that's before you could mean that many more federal board decisions are called in, which I think isn't a very efficient use of our time. So please vote against the motion. Thank you.
I'll ask Mark Johnson from Reigate and Banstead to please stand by, and now call Lucas North from Tameside, and Lucas is speaking for the amendment.
Thanks, Belinda, and hello, conference. I want to start by saying I actually agree with, I think, almost everything that Chris and Simon said, and Stephen as well. The truth is, I think federal council is probably a bit broken. I think accountability mechanisms in our party probably aren't that effective in general, including, at conference where we have a report from party bodies, which is very interesting, and then we have a few questions that usually don't actually get to what people's real gripes are. But the motion in front of us isn't about fixing all of those much larger issues. It's about federal council and what should be the bar for federal council overturning a decision of federal board. My view generally is that scrutiny and accountability bodies only work if they have actual power. Now, I fully appreciate Chris's arguments about soft power being just as important there, but the truth is, as it stands, federal council, it is nearly functionally impossible to overturn a decision of the federal board. I was on federal board for a good portion of last year and left sort of at the start of January. The truth is federal board does sometimes get it wrong. There were decisions in my time on federal board that we made and then unmade 2 weeks later because we realised that we ourselves had got it wrong. And I think there are times where someone needs to be able to say to the board, please, please have a look at this again. As it stands, we're missing that because it takes an unreachably high bar for federal council to exercise its power to do just that. When it was created, there were a lot of concerns about shrinking board and creating council as a scrutiny body. We've seen that system bed in for a while now. It probably isn't working. And a lot of those issues are cultural. And I think that giving federal council some real power will help to fix those cultural issues. Hopefully people will turn up if they feel like their say in that meeting is more likely to have an effect because council can actually vote to do something. And as we're in the middle of these elections, it's probably the perfect time to be discussing whether to give the group of people we're about to elect more power so that we know when we cast those ballots exactly what powers those people will have. So I would urge you to vote for this constitutional amendment, and I would also urge you all to think carefully about who you elect to federal council in a couple of months' time and make sure that they are the people who you would want holding board to account on the most important decisions made in this party.
Thank you. May I ask Max Wilkinson, MP, to stand by from Cheltenham, and I now call Mark Johnson from Reigate and Banstead to speak against the motion.
Chair, thank you. Good afternoon, fellow party members. They say constitutional amendments are usually a bit dull, but the constitutional amendment considered yesterday is still making the news today, so I think that's not always the case. I'm asking you to vote against this amendment, not because it's inherently bad. I think there are a few problems and a few risks that I'll describe in a second, but because I would regard it as a sticking plaster approach. I've enjoyed this, let's say, the first half of the debate. I've heard new ideas, including from colleagues that I've worked with, and we've not, I'm also a federal council member, I should say, we've not had a proper discussion, a proper review of the first term of this body in the last few months. The idea for this amendment came up in the middle of our last meeting, which was about May, June, on the hoof. It wasn't an agenda item. The text was settled by correspondence afterwards. We might have had a discussion a few days ago and we should have met again, but that meeting was also cancelled because the agenda turned out to be very thin and people were travelling here and so on. Why did the Federal Council, why was it set up? Well, Anthony touched on that a bit. Essentially, 3 years ago, that reform was to shrink the board. The board itself was about 40 seats then, it's now 16 persons. And the Federal Council is about 40 persons. If we change this voting threshold in the proposal, in effect, we change the relative power of the two bodies. the board here and the council here. And the risk is that we make them rivals of each other. A proposal could start here, go there, be rejected, be sent back, and if the two sides can't agree, then you know, it's never been answered what happens to it. Does it just go backwards and forwards forever? We don't know. So that shrinking of the board, in my view, was a device to put more power in fewer hands. That in itself was illiberal. You know, we agreed at the time, but I think it's not worked out. The downside of that, or the downside of the governance we have at the moment, is that problems are swept under the carpet, lessons are not learnt, time and money is wasted. There are significant problems in the party governance that we need to address properly with a decent review and not this sticking plaster approach. The ultimate consequence of getting governance and standards and scrutiny wrong is our leader on the television this morning and on this platform an hour ago talking, in my view, absolute rubbish about the debate that failed yesterday morning. That's not about policy, it's about compliance with the law. Our current election arrangements are unlawful, and the board was asked to fix that in July. It never did so. The chief executive and the returning officer were asked to fix that in May. They never did so. We need to get governance right, because if we don't look a credible option in the eyes of the voters. This is a really serious set of issues. Please reject the motion today, and let's get this right in the medium term. Thank you very much.
Could I call Max Wilkinson, please, from Cheltenham, and ask Baroness Kath Pinnock to stand by.
Well, I see the faces of MP colleagues wondering, what's he doing up there? Those who know me well will be confused by my presence on this stage. I am not exactly what you would describe as a conference ultra, and I'm certainly not an enthusiast for internal party process. But conference, I'm here today to strongly urge you to reject this constitutional amendment. The reason is simple. We have a federal board. It is democratically accountable to conference and to members. The Federal Council is an important safeguard in cases of great controversy or major blunders. It is not meant to be a permanent second chamber, and as Liberals we are of course sceptical of permanent second chambers. It's not meant to be like a federal board Mark II. Rather, it is there if the board looks like it may be making a major error, to be able to step in and say, hang on, think again. That is why the current threshold for the Council to overturn a board decision is set deliberately high at 2/3 of its members. Now that margin of victory in a vote is set in all kinds of boards that we're aware of, and we'll have all served on these types of boards. It is not unusual. This proposal cuts that in half. It would only need a simple majority, not a 2/3, and that could be at a poorly attended meeting with only 1/3 of the full Council voting in favour. That would turn the Federal Council from being an emergency brake that we might need into instead a permanent second chamber, and we're sceptical of those, with a small number of people being able to regularly block the board's work. Now, why should we make this change? Well, the General Election Review has just looked at how our governance worked. The 2019 review was very critical of the then board structure, which is why Conference voted to reform the board. And I think many of us would not like to repeat 2019. I certainly wouldn't. I started off at 7-1 on and lost the election. I can tell you it was thoroughly humiliating. But the reformed board? Well, the 2024 election review didn't have any criticisms to make of the new structure. In other words, something was broken, we fixed it, and we passed its review. Job done. Let's not break it again.
Thank you. I call Kath Pinnock, please, our Deputy Leader in the Lords, and ask Councillor Sue Bray to stand by.
Well then, Conference, governance of any organisation, and particularly our party, is very important so that we get the right decisions made in the right places in a timely way. And as Max has just said, we had this huge review 5 years ago to put right the the over-bureaucratic way that decisions were made in the past. Now, so currently we have, on the one hand, the Federal Board, of which I am a member, where all the members, except for me, are directly elected. I'm on there as chair of Federal Communications Elections Committee, and a directly elected Federal Council. So there's plenty of democracy. It gets the big tick as far as democracy is concerned. Now, where's the accountability then? And this is where I think there's the role of Federal Council is very important. There's 39, I think, members of Federal Council who will have a lot to do, if they do it well, to think about the decisions that are being made, choose the ones where they think maybe not all the information was in front of Federal Board, and ask Federal Board, call it in. And as you've heard, that mechanism's only been used a couple of times, which tells me that actually so far it's working okay. Now, listen, I'm not against a review of Federal Council, because I'm sure they could find different ways of doing the role that they've been set by the party. But setting up diametrically opposed, democratically elected groups to make decisions for the party seems to be a recipe for not making decisions at all. And certainly we don't want to be in that situation. We need to allow the democratic process to take its course, decisions made by the board. Federal Council look into the detail. If they don't like it, call it in. 13 members, call it in. That was the 39. Delve down into the facts. Ask questions. Great, do it. But then, to overturn a decision would need to be taken very, very seriously and carefully, which is why there is a high bar now. And I urge everybody here to not support this amendment, reject it, turn it down, but let's get Federal Council thinking about how better they could do their role, so more members on Federal Council can take part and make the changes that they are looking for.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Crewbray, who is the Vice Chair of Federal Council, and then we'll be proceeding to a vote.
Good afternoon, Conference. There's a few misapprehensions gone on in this debate. One of them is that this is somehow going to affect the call-in mechanism. It is not going to affect the call-in mechanism. We will still require 13 members, a third of Federal Council, to call something in. The difficulty we have got is that we cannot guarantee that we've got 26 people in a meeting to vote against something. And I think there's a misunderstanding about what the role of Federal Council is. So, yes, we are set up to scrutinise the Federal Board, but we have been given the power by conference, if necessary, in extremis, to ask the Federal Board to take a decision again. It's the same situation as you have on a council. You can ask the executive or the cabinet on a council to take a decision again. If necessary, they will decide that they don't want to change their minds, and they will continue. But at the moment, we don't have the power because we cannot get the number of people present and voting to actually exercise the power we've been given by conference. This is the first three-year term, and it's just, whatever the good intentions were when it was set up, it has not worked. I have to say, and I don't wish to be rude to Max himself, but if his MP colleagues who are appointed to Federal Council by the Parliamentary Party turned up, that will give us a couple more bodies towards the quorum. I don't think the occupants of the hall has ever attended, the current ones anyway. I have sat on almost every committee in the party at every level. This is the only one I know that has an absolute requirement of the members of the committee in order to take a decision. Every other committee that we have works on having a quorum, below which you cannot go to make a legitimate decision, and then a majority of those present and voting. This is the only one which has an absolute requirement for numbers, and it hasn't worked. So we are asking you, as a federal council, by a large majority of those who were at the meeting and discussed it, to give federal council the ability to actually do the job it was asked to do when it was set up. That doesn't mean to say there are not other problems with federal council. A lot of what Chris and Simon said we can agree with. Teething issues, and we need to get it functioning properly next time. But it cannot function properly if it cannot ever exercise the power which it was supposed to be given. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to a vote, and because this is a constitutional amendment, it needs a 2/3 majority in order to pass. So if you can, we've got open. If you could show your passes now, please. Oh, for F28. Yes, voting in favour first. Sorry, I do beg your pardon, sorry. But if you're voting for the motion as put by the movers of the motion, please raise your passes for us to see. Thank you. Thank you. And now, if you wish to vote against the motion as put, please raise your passes. Thank you. If you can just keep them there a second while we wait for the online voting to catch up. Thank you. Against. Very good. That's passed. Thank you. Well, it's voted against. Sorry. It's Now we will be, I'll give you 5 minutes if you wish to quickly move around, but we will be moving on to F29 quite quickly. Okay, thank you, Conference. We're going to move on quite swiftly now to F29, and I'll call Councillor Mike Cox, please, the Party Treasurer, to propose the motion.
Thank you for that round of applause. Conference, welcome to the most exciting motion of the day, but it is a motion that we all have a financial stake in, so we can be involved. This motion is all about the minimum subscription which the party can charge members. Last year, we were proposing to freeze the minimum membership rate for ordinary members, for those attending entitled to state benefits, for young Liberals, and for those members recruited by young Liberals. There is nothing in this motion which, of course, prevents state parties from settling their own procedures, recommending higher recommended and minimum membership rates. And there is nothing that prevents the Federal Party from running pilots to expand membership, providing they don't last for longer than a year and impact on state parties themselves. And finally, the motion recommends that the federal levy on the membership subscriptions remains at 50%. Just to be clear, this is the share of the Federal Party takes from each subscription, and the rest going, of course, to state and regional parties. So I'd like to take this opportunity to move this. It's, as it's a steady as she goes motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And as there hasn't been nobody to speak against the motion, we won't need our summator, so we will proceed directly to a vote. So please raise your hand if you are for the motion. Can you open online voting? Bear with us, we're just waiting for online votes to catch up. Bear with us, it's not there yet. I mean, it's overwhelmingly carried here in the room. Thank you. And then please raise your hands if you wish to vote against. Is there anybody? There's nobody against. Okay, thank you. That is overwhelmingly carried. I'd like to thank my aide, Paul McGarry, and my hall aide, Cara Jenkinson, and we'll hand over to Dee Ducey for the next motion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Conference, and welcome to F30, which you'll find on the agenda, page 60, and there is one amendment which is printed in Conference daily. Can I please remind speakers to keep to time, and can I ask Catherine Macy to stand by, and I call Elliot Chapman-Jones from Folkestone and Hythe to propose the motion.
Good afternoon, Conference. Almost a century ago, in 1928, the Liberal Party published a report into Britain's industrial strategy, the famous Yellow Book. It sought to reshape Liberal thinking on the economy and address post-World War I mass unemployment and economic depression. Yet, in the face of these great challenges, Liberals also proposed something new to Britain, the creation of national parks. The time has come, they said, for decisive national action to conserve the beauties and amenities of the countryside for future generations. The cost would not be great, they wrote, but the benefit to the nation would be immeasurable. Today we face our own challenges, a cost of living crisis, worsening public health, and of course, a climate and nature crisis. This motion seeks to build on the forethought of Liberals a century ago and ensure that people today and tomorrow can have access to nature and the great outdoors. The motion reaffirms Liberal Democrat commitments to a new nationwide active travel strategy, to completing the King Charles III coastal path, and doubling the number of national trails. Because sadly, people's access to nature is declining, whilst inequality of access is on the rise. And we know how important nature is to people. I only need to take you back to the pandemic, when in lockdown, people sought joy and solace in the natural world like never before. Poll after poll, shows that good quality natural places are the most important thing to foster pride in people's community. Even more so than pubs, even more than the local football team. So if Liberal Democrats want to be the champions of community politics, we need to champion the places that people love. So this motion aims to help communities create more of those places. We'd transform disused railway lines into new public rights of way, and we'd also create incentives for disused land to be turned over to public use. This has the potential to create 5,453 miles worth of public rights of way in England alone. In Folkestone, where I live, the old Folkestone Harbour railway line, closed after the creation of the Channel Tunnel, lies overgrown and disused. Instead of being able to walk down it, if I want to take my 3-year-old son, Rory, to the beach or to town, I have to walk along a busy and polluted road. This motion will help communities to take back control of places like these and ensure that they can be enjoyed by walkers, wheelers, cyclists, and indeed horse riders. And this will, of course, help address the public health crisis. A really interesting point about the writers of the Yellow Book is that they propose the creation of national parks should be introduced by the Ministry of Health. They recognise the link between green space and public health. They highlighted that death rates were higher in urban areas where light and air were lacking. And almost 100 years on, this is sadly still the case. The Marmot Review in 2010 exposed the cost of environmental decay to our health and life expectancy. It warned that those living in the most deprived areas had less green space, worse air quality, and worse river pollution. That not only shortens people's life expectancy, it also means they live more years of their life in poor health. Addressing this will help address health inequalities. 1 in 3 people don't have access to green space within 15 minutes of their house. We can cut GP appointments and we can save the NHS billions. That's why this motion reaffirms our commitment to create a legal guarantee for fair and equitable access to nature and also to pass a new Clean Air Act. But there is a difference between now and when Liberals were writing the Yellow Book a century ago. And that's the state of nature itself. The evidence from the last 50 years alone shows that we have lost almost half of our biodiversity. Shockingly, today, 1 in 6 species in the UK is at risk of extinction. For bird species, that's even higher. Almost half of our bird species are at risk of being lost forever. There is no point opening the gates if what lies beyond is a silent and empty field. And Britain is a nation of nature lovers. Almost 8 million of us are members of wildlife charities. It's woven into our national culture. It's the reason why the public once named Sir David Attenborough as the UK's dream Prime Minister. I believe Ed Davey was a close second. The Conservative government oversaw historic declines in our wildlife, and the new Labour government seem intent on impressing the accelerator. So it falls to Liberal Democrats to protect the places and the landscapes that people love. That's why our commitments to fund environmental land management schemes to support farmers to restore nature with an extra £1 billion a year are so important, alongside creating new wild belts for nature's recovery and designating new national nature parks. Finally, this motion champions outdoor education, aiming for every child to have at least one residential experience in primary school and then another in secondary school, nurturing a lifelong love of nature. In the words of David Attenborough, no one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced. Conference, this is more than just a motion on access to nature. As the Liberals of 1928 recognised, it's an economic boost, it's a public health intervention, and it's a way to better connect people with their communities, where the expense would not be great, but the benefit to the nation would be immeasurable. I urge you to support this motion and clear the way for liberty. The land must all be free.
Thank you. Will Ollie Glover please stand by? And I now call Catherine Macy from Bristol to propose Amendment 1.
Hello, Conference. Usually when I'm up here, it's either a very serious issue or a very tight debate. And I'm hoping today this amendment will be neither. I don't think it is particularly complicated, but 5 years ago, when my spine injury started to develop pain, I started to realize a lot of things, as you might. And things like inclusive architecture, I've never liked it. It doesn't actually deal with the issue, but that's a whole other motion, is now incredibly intrusive to even me. And unfortunately, you do notice and care about things more when they affect you personally, even if I try and make sure I'm educating myself on other issues. I'm really lucky that my pain levels, whilst constantly simmering away in the background, can be brought down with a rest. But I do need a rest, and that is where this motion has come from. Throughout my last few years of becoming more and more disabled and in increasing pain, I have realized just how little spaces there are for people to simply have a sit down. I find myself regularly buying a drink simply to be able to sit in a cafe while out and about. I find myself regularly not feeling comfortable or safe sitting in some areas and needing, especially if I'm on my own. And again, that's really where this motion has come from. This is a fantastic motion to begin with, but it needs to be for everyone. And making sure it's wheelchair accessible is one step, but if we're trying to encourage people to go on long walks, which I am in theory capable of doing in very short 5 to 10 minute stints, this is one way. Also, who doesn't love a sit down? Especially when you've got a lovely view, get a picnic out, and this will just really enforce that fact that nature is for everyone. It doesn't matter if all you can do is get a blue badge parking space, amble for 5 minutes, and sit down and be able to look out. Ideally, like I say, maybe I could even have a couple of mile-long walk over the course of a day instead of an hour. But recognizing that accessibility needs to be thought throughout. We're doing a fantastic job as Liberal Democrats in thinking about this now. I was really, really happy to hear the praises at the Conference Access Group for FCC and the wider party at their thinking. But let's take that one step further. We need to be thinking about different types of disabilities. We need to be thinking about neurodiversity, wheelchairs, but also people who can walk sometimes, or can walk on some days but not others. And that's what this motion has tried to do, or amendment even, to just give that motion, that tiny little push, to be an even stronger motion overall. So please support our amendment as the Disability Association, and please support the motion overall, because nature is for everyone, and we belong there, it belongs with us, and our access to it must not go. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Nigel Jones please stand by? And I now call Ollie Glover from Didcot and Wantage.
Conference, I want to take you back to roughly this time last year. I was a brand new Liberal Democrat MP in my first conference as a Liberal Democrat Member of Parliament. And after an intense few days in Brighton, I then had the dubious privilege and fun of having to move house as a result of my delightful landlords at the time serving me a Section 21 eviction notice on the morning I got elected. Stick with me, this is relevant, I promise you. Suffice it to say, both conference and then moving house were very, very exhausting. So it was a real pleasure on the Saturday after all of that to be cycling along a disused railway in Aberdeenshire in a total contrast to everything else, of just hearing the wind going through the trees and admiring the amazing Aberdeenshire landscape. That was part of a 2-week holiday, and I was cycling from Aberdeen out west towards Aboyne to have a wonderful few days exploring that part of Aberdeenshire. And we know from both UK and foreign experience that those car-free segregated routes for both walking, cycling and wheeling are the most popular and the most well used because they're safer and they're vastly more pleasant. And some of the content of this motion is all about addressing the fact that many people are not so fortunate to have such car-free routes on their doorstep. And we definitely need to do more to make that easier. Now, I've been having some engagement with the charity Sustrans. They have actually just changed their name, but I can't remember what it is now. Anyway, and they have some fantastic ideas of how we can unlock more disused railways. And we as Liberal Democrats want to give communities and local authorities greater powers to be able to make the most of those disused routes and turn them into high quality walking, cycling and wheeling routes for everybody to enjoy. One of the barriers at the moment is that planning permission is needed to create and improve such routes on disused railway land. And to fix this, one solution could be to amend the 2015 Town and Country Planning Order so that these things become permitted development rights, not just for recreation, but for other purposes. The big benefit of that is it would reduce the cost and complexity of delivering those schemes, because many of them tend to get a bit mired in long processes and red tape for something that is quite straightforward. Maintenance liabilities are also a bit of a challenge in terms of these. So there's things that we can do in terms of looking at how these things can be funded and to keep it simpler. The motion says that the UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world and one of the least densely forested countries in Europe and in Britain, with 1 in 6 species threatened with extinction. It's really important that we restore nature as a part of slowing down climate change. But we know that access to nature greatly increases adults and children's well-being. It's therefore really important we create mechanisms for access to restored nature, and we need to support our local authorities in doing so. So please support the motion.
Thank you. Will Laura Gordon please stand by? And I now call Nigel Jones from North Staffordshire.
Thank you. Fellow Liberal Democrats, I want to first mention the decline in bus services because it makes it impossible in too many places to walk anything other than circular routes from a car, and of course excludes those people who don't have a car. Secondly, I want to mention woodlands. Yes, we must plant trees, but they do need to be carefully chosen, a carefully chosen mixture in carefully chosen places. Blanket planting of trees reduces biodiversity, makes some footpaths rather dull to walk along, and even obscures good viewpoints, which I have noticed happening in some parts of the country already. One of the things that helps mental health is the ability to walk to a really nice viewpoint, and sometimes, as I say, that's being obscured now by too many trees. The motion mentions peatlands, so good for storing carbon, but experts also remind us that grass stores carbon and it stores it in its roots. So that has some advantage over trees. So maybe we can start a campaign with a new meaning to the phrase grassroots campaign. 18 years ago, I initiated and designed a walkway 40 kilometres long through the borough of Newcastle under Lyme. It's called the Newcastle Way, if you want to look up all the details about it. It's got its own website. And I deliberately chose some of that walkway to be close to the urban area, close to residential places, in order to encourage people, especially those from the more deprived parts of the borough, to go out walking. And I also deliberately chose it to go through historic industrial sites and near to a number of bus stops, again, for the purpose of making it more accessible. The County Council provided funds and staff to do all that. And as I say, that was 18 years ago. Now, because of cuts to local government and cuts in bus services, the situation is nowhere near as good. I'm sure I could not have succeeded if I'd been trying to do the same thing now. The County Council even struggles, I'm finding, to do basic maintenance on this walkway. Yes, they say good to have it, and we do need to maintain it, but when it comes to the crunch, they do very little, and they keep telling me they can't do it because they haven't got the funds. So that's why I am very, very pleased to see this motion today. So I hope we will clearly vote for this motion to help all those people, particularly in, as I say, in my area, in the deprived urban parts, to have walkways that are close to where they live. Thank you.
Thank you. Can Simon Pike please stand by? And I now call Laura Gordon from Bicester and Woodstock.
Hi, thank you, Conference. And we're going to be keeping this short because Felicity here, I think, is starting to get a little bit hungry. But I just wanted to speak briefly to support the motion and to highlight that for rural areas like the Division, Kidlington North and Knockmore, where I was elected in May, these areas, footpaths and bridleways, it's not just about leisure and health. It's also about getting around. If you live in Village A and your nearest bus service is in Village B, then you need the footpath to be able to get to the bus. So losing that footpath being inaccessible, might make the difference between you being entirely car dependent and you being able to actually get around using public transport, potentially children being able to walk to school. But at the moment, it's, local authorities are simply not able to maintain these vital transport arteries. And I think this is a fantastic motion. I'd urge you all to support it, but I think we do need to bear in mind as we visit this topic that it really isn't just about leisure. It's also about rural communities, about maintaining healthy rural communities where people have a variety of ways to get around and where they're able to access the vital services that they need to continue that rural way of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could Richard Good please stand by? And I now call Simon Pike from West Berkshire and Newbury.
Good afternoon, Conference. This is an excellent motion on an important topic. We've already heard many speeches highlighting different aspects of it. I am a member of several local bodies with responsibilities to conserve and enhance the landscape and to improve public access to it. I therefore hope that I will be able to support it unreservedly. However, I have concerns about lines 65 to 69. These reaffirm existing party policy, so this is not a criticism of the authors of the motion. Line 65 calls for the creation of new designation of national nature parks. Despite asking questions at fringe events, I have no real understanding of what these are. I think it would be better to strengthen the powers of duties of national parks and national landscapes under existing legislation, which would then automatically apply to all of them. At present, national parks are responsible for planning approval within their areas. They are not elected bodies. If new national parks are created, this will take responsibility for planning away from local councils. This is contrary to the preamble of the Constitution, which states that decisions should be taken at the lowest practical level. I don't know if this would be the case also for national nature parks. Many British local councils have examples of best practice that can be shared without looking to Europe for voir vert, as mentioned in line 16. Indeed, my neighbouring local authority of Wokingham is developing a network of greenways, which, as you will know, is the English for voir vert. I was also disappointed that the motion does not recognise the use of bridleways by horse riders, as well as for walking, wheeling and cycling. I will therefore support this motion, but with these reservations. However, I urge our parliamentarians to take these points into account in any policies or future legislation in this field. Thank you, Conference.
Thank you. Will Louise Morales stand by, please? And I now call Richard Good from Richmond and North Allerton.
Good afternoon, Conference. I've had the pleasure for the last 30 years of living in the Yorkshire Dales National Park. 12 of those years I was a member of the Richmondshire District Council before it was abolished 2 years ago. I was a member of the National Park Authority for a number of years, And over 50 years, I was a leader in the Scout movement, introducing hundreds of young people to the joys of the outdoors over many years. I was also a Duke Res Award expedition assessor for a number of years. So I fully support this motion, with just one concern, which I'll return to in a moment. Converting former railway tracks to access is a great idea. And whilst I was a member of the National Park, we had, I was the lead member working on a scheme to open a railway line from Hawes towards Kirby Stephen. And the purpose of that really wasn't just for walkers, it was for horse riders, families with prams, etc. And most importantly, I think, for people with wheelchairs, with far too few places in this country where people with wheelchairs can go for a walk, or go for a ride, should I say. So I think it was a very important part of it. Currently, the Yorkshire Dales National Park, and I suspect other national parks, struggle to fund the maintenance of the paths that they've got already, and bridleways that they've got already. North Yorkshire Council has just reduced its grant for the second year running towards the maintenance of these paths. So I have a concern about how new paths would be maintained. I will warmly welcome the move to plant more trees. But I have a slight concern that we don't plant trees in good quality agricultural land. In my opinion, we've lost quite a lot of good agricultural land to solar panels. I'm not against solar panels, but we've wasted an awful lot of good land to solar panels in recent years. So I do hope that the planting of trees can be sensibly done, and I say not in good quality agricultural land. Please support the motion and the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Can Jeremy Hargreaves please stand by? And I now call Louise Morales from Woking.
Thank you. 14 years ago, I got elected because the local village green that my children learnt to ride their bikes on was built on. I actually realised quite quickly that the problem was that the planning policy was wrong. Planning policy that ran out in 2027. I joined the planning committee, I became chair of planning even, and actually when a really big planning application came up, I said, I've got a cycle route that stops 200 yards short of a new school. When you build in this great big green field with trees all down one side, could you put a cycle lane in to connect the school to the existing cycle route 200 yards away? It opened this September, only one day before the beginning of term in September, but it's now open. If you look on my Facebook page, you can see the zooming through at very high speed on the beautiful new cycle route. What we need to do is us as local councillors, and in fact, I've just been elected as county councillor there for that ward because I'm now, and so when we become unitary, I'll be able to continue and get it to join the next borough when we join with them. What we need to do is use our planning policy. Make sure when we write planning policy, we put in routes will be put in every single time anybody builds anything. We have to make sure that we build in routes that go through fields, that go through trees, that connect different spaces, that every single school should be connected with something. Use these policies. We've got 2,500 local councillors. We don't control all of the councils, and I spent the majority of my 14 years in the opposition, fighting against Conservatives who believes that cars were the only way to go. We used to be able to cycle through the town centre. They said you have to walk, you can't take bikes in the town centre anymore. But we are now in charge of the Lib Dems, and we're saying we want to make sure that there are other forms of transport besides bikes. And actually we're looking at using SANGS money. For those of you who've got SANGS, it means suitable alternative natural green spaces for taking dogs to walk, so they don't disturb the Dartford warbler, which is a very rare bird in the Thames Valley. But our new SANGS sites are right on the outside of town, and the people in the tower blocks who haven't got any cars because there's no car parking can't get to them. So we're looking at routes, and as a county councillor, I now have access to the highways budget, and I'm looking at routes to take the cycle route from the town centre to the SANGS site, and use some of the SANGS money to help fund it, use some of the highways planning to make sure it works through. Surrey said, oh, we can only get it as far as the park, and the park belongs to the borough, so actually we can't do the borough because that's borough. And I said, don't worry, I'm the borough councillor for it as well, we'll sort it. I think it might take a little wee while. I have to get these two parties communicating communicating, but all of us across the country should be joining up to make sure that people have access to our countryside, that we build it into it. We don't just say we want to build access miles and miles from towns. We need to build them to where people live, so people living in the middle of large towns and cities can get out to countryside. So I will be totally supporting this motion, and please urge every single one of you, and those of you in local councils, please go out and put more cycle routes and more walking routes and more trees in your local plans.
Thank you. Can Tim Farron please stand by? And I now call Jeremy Hargreaves from Croydon.
I love a countryside walk, anywhere, in the dry, through the mud, on the flat, or preferably up a hill. And away from the countryside, walking is my main way around the city where I live. But that isn't why I think this motion is so important. Because what it sets out are some of the most powerful ways there are of putting our basic liberal principles into action to improve lives. At its heart is, of course, active personal travel, walking or cycling, getting around by doing it ourselves. And that's, of course, a pretty good statement of what liberalism is. But it's more than that too. It points the way towards how we can each keep ourselves healthy, maximise our well-being, if you like, by all of us taking responsibility for ourselves. In an ageing society and with a health service under all sorts of financial and demographic pressure, that's surely the liberal vision, each of us responsible for ourselves, and not just expecting some professional or system, crucial though they obviously are, to take responsibility for our lives for us. There is, of course, a role for society and the state too, and that is, as here, of supporting us as citizens to be active and follow our own path, and setting the framework to enable that. The approach set out in this motion very much starts from the human scale and how that can be supported and facilitated, including with a bench, if we improve that amendment, as I hope we do. It's very much about community and family and friends, who we actually do many of the activities listed here with. It understands the value of protecting and helping the recovery of the environment, the planet, and nature. And there's even a European cooperation twist to complete the set. Conference, this motion is a bit of a Liberal Democrat core principles bingo. You won't find a more comprehensive expression of the Liberal approach on our agenda this week than this motion. I urge you to vote for it, to do what you can in your area, to put into practice what it sets out, as Nigel and Louisa and others have done so impressively as we've heard about. But please also notice our most fundamental political principles at its heart, and seek to put them into practice in all our policies and our communities in whatever other way you can too. Thank you.
Thank you. Can Bridget Fox stand by to summate the main motion? And I now call Tim Farron from Westmoreland, Furness and Eden.
Afternoon all. The Beeching railway cuts, they kind of happened because of a short-sighted view that the motorway was the future and that the railway was history. But the Beeching cuts also serve as a warning from history, that we should never be so beguiled by the shiny new thing, motorways, that we discard the tried and tested old thing, railways. For example, today, the shiny new thing of living our lives online versus the tried and tested thing, going outside and actually talking to people. Because there is no point extending access to nature if the coming generations have no desire to use that access. So in this motion, we propose that every young person at primary and then again at secondary school should have a funded opportunity of a week-long residential outdoor education experience to build a love of nature that will last a lifetime. Yet, learning outside and going on those life-changing residentials is increasingly becoming the preserve only of schools from wealthy communities. And indeed, a risk-averse culture does not help either. Over the last couple of generations, perhaps, we have sought to protect our children from danger so much that we have actually done them harm by denying them those experiences that would have given them resilience, wisdom, better mental and physical health. Now, over my years as Member of Parliament for Westmoreland, the issue that has grown most in volume in my postbag, my inbox, my conversations, is the utter tragedy of mental health crises facing our young people. So why don't we choose to do something utterly radical today? Something that will actually reduce the number of young people suffering mental health crises in the first place. The outdoors is the antidote to so many of our ills. Time on the fells and dales of Cumbria, other national parks are also available. They put you out of your comfort zone, make you rely on others, and experience the scary wonder of being relied upon yourself by others, that they teach you that you can do things you thought impossible. They nurture an ability to solve problems and to rise above the panic that can freeze us when crisis hits. They build relationships and the capacity to form friendships, skills that are transferable, and above all, a resilience to help you cope with the stuff that life is going to chuck at you. When it comes to tackling the mental health crisis, it feels like we're figuratively fishing struggling people out of the water, when maybe what we really need to do is to build their resilience so they don't fall in the first place. Ironically, of course, we do this in part by actually pushing people into the water after an entirely appropriate risk assessment by a qualified instructor, of course. So let's undo the harm done by beaching and today by a terminally online culture to ensure that the land that was made for the people is accessed with joy and zeal by our young people. Please back the motion and the amendment.
Thank you. Bridget Fox to submit on the motion. Bridget's from Islington.
Thank you, Conference. I know it's been a long day. It's great to see so many of you still here. And it might seem rather odd that someone from the tiny landlocked urban borough of Islington is speaking up for access to nature, but we're from one of the communities that most needs it and most appreciates it. Conference, summing up such a wide-ranging debate and motion was always going to be a challenge. A motion referencing national trails, cycle paths, wild camping. It's clearly not just Ed who's embracing adventurous activity in the great outdoors. But one thing remains clear. When it comes to defending nature and our access to nature, it's Liberal Democrats who get it. This motion and the amendment, which deserve your united support, reaffirms our commitments to nature protection, to nature recovery, and introduces a transformative approach to nature access nationwide, drawing on the experience of the European Green Network's Voie Verte, harnessing our historic infrastructure of railways and canals for a future where communities are truly connected to nature, liberating us to explore, to learn, and to cherish the land that was made for the people. And we've heard from Ollie Glover and Laura Gordon, who shared the importance of active travel and public transport. A raft of speakers from Yorkshire to Stoke, Berkshire, Woking share the impact access to nature has and why our vision matters. And while I'm rather more pro-tree than some of our speakers, it's great to have that common commitment to the value that nature has for all of us. Jeremy Hargreaves urged us to put our principles into practice, and so we must. And Tim Farron reminded us of the lifelong impact that outdoor education has. Catherine, moving Amendment 1, which we accept, reminded us that access is for all. Alongside that bold vision are actions that councillors and campaigners can take now, ones where Liberal Democrats are leading the way. Delivering nature recovery strategies, planting more trees, reconnecting rights of way, saving rural buses, championing outdoor education, and using the planning system to protect nature, not destroy it. Conference, we need nature and nature needs us Liberal Democrats more than ever, because Labour doesn't get it. Falsely blaming nature, cutting funding, dismantling protection, stifling initiatives, a toxic mix of ignorance and incompetence that we cannot allow to continue. Conference, we understand that nature not only enriches our lives, but makes life itself possible. John Milton, the great poet and great liberal, wrote in Paradise Lost, "Accuse not nature, she hath done her part. Do thou thine.
Liberal Democrats, let's pass this motion with the amendment and with intent, for there is much for us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now move to the votes. The first vote is on Amendment 1. Online voting is open. Can I see those in the hall in favour of Amendment 1? Thank you. And may I see those against Amendment 1? Nobody against? Yep, that's confirmed. That is very, very clearly carried. Thank you. Can I see those in favour of the amendment as a whole, the motion as a whole as amended, please? Those in favour? Thank you. And those against? Let me check online. Just waiting for it to catch up. Okay, that is overwhelmingly carried. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank my aide, Cara Jenkinson, and the hall aide, Charlie Hasted. And that's the end of the session. Have a lovely evening.